Chapter 24:32. Rumble. The heavens and the earth were overturned while the mountains and rivers were shattered and withered. A destructive torrent of the great Tao swept out in all directions from where the two of them fought, and it was like a destructive storm that raged through the world. Besides a few emperors who charged forward, the other experts were either blasted away or avoided long ago. Everyone looked over in shock. The battlefield in the distance was like a chaotic zone, and there were scenes of destruction everywhere. Mountains and rivers had collapsed, everything had been turned to ash, and the ground had cracked into numerous enormous ravines. Who's stronger in this battle? Everyone's eyes widened in shock, and even the emperors found it difficult to distinguish. Ling Xuanzi, is that all you've got? Lin Sun's figure suddenly appeared, like a big sun rising in the sky or a big abyss floating and sinking. With unparalleled power, he rushed down violently. Boundless divine might. Junior brother, the battle has just begun. Don't be anxious. Ling Xuanzi held the 3-foot-long sword energy with an indifferent expression. Only his aura grew sharper and more terrifying, and it shook the surroundings. Rumble. Rumble. The two of them fought fiercely once more. It was like the collision of primordial divine mountains. Every single collision caused the heavens and the earth to collapse, the void to rumble, and all sorts of terrifying scenes appeared. The sound of Tao rumbled like thunderclaps, the scene of doomsday appeared in the world, the sun and moon fell forever, and the great Tao collapsed. These shocking scenes caused this peerless battle between emperors to seem even more terrifying. If such a battle were to occur in the outside world, it would probably sink an entire world. If one looked carefully, they would notice that every single attack Lin Sun made was blocked, and he seemed to be at a disadvantage. He was unable to break through the 3-foot-long sword energy no matter what he did. However, it was a different scene in the eyes of the emperors. It seems like Lord Tao Master can't hold on any longer. Someone trembled, and his expression changed drastically. Some sharp-eyed people noticed that every time Ling Xuanzi blocked Lin Sun's attack, the world he was in would suddenly collapse and overturn, causing him to have no choice but to shift his position in order to have a place to stand. This meant that even though Lin Sun could block every single attack, Ling Xuanzi suffered a great impact as well, and he couldn't truly rely on his own strength to resolve it. This fact caused those emperors to be shocked. Kill. On the battlefield, Lin Sun roared. His fist force surged and condensed like a furnace. With the power to suppress the world, it rumbled and rolled over. The scene of the world falling into oblivion and everything being obliterated could be faintly seen in the surroundings of the furnace. Even an 8th-level emperor would feel fear and despair when faced with Lin Sun's punch. Boom. Ling Xuanzi's 3-feet-long sword qi could no longer hold on and it exploded inch by inch. The terrifying fist qi pressed down with an indestructible might. Ling Xuanzi's face was emotionless as he instantly executed 39 supreme Tao art. Every single one of them could be said to be at the supreme standard of the imperial scripture, and they contained the peak profundities of the imperial Tao, causing their might to be unimaginable. But no matter how Ling Xuanzi changed, Lin Sun's fist force had always been simple and natural, yet its might was extremely overbearing, and it broke through everything that stood in its way. Not long after, Ling Xuanzi was blasted flying by a punch, and his figure was like a sharp sword that shot out in reverse, tearing through the sky. The void, mountains, rivers, and so on that blocked Ling Xuanzi were all smashed and crushed. Some spectators thought that they had escaped far enough, but at this moment, they were also affected by the aftermath of the battle. Blood sprayed from their mouths and noses, and their hands were broken. Their feet were broken, and they died on the spot. Not bad at all. Junior brother must have caused a lot of trouble when he reached the Emperor realm. Haha, it's really an eye-opener for me. Ling Xuanzi steadied himself while a wisp of a seemingly insane smile appeared on his handsome face. He wiped off a wisp of blood on the corner of his mouth and said, Come, let us brothers fight to our heart's content today. Life and death? Grand Tao? Let's put all of that aside for now. After that, boom. He moved in the air like a divine sword as he charged towards Lin Sun. His power was even stronger than before. I've said that I'll let you understand what complete defeat is. At this moment, Lin Sun was also boiling with fighting intent. His spirit, chi, and spirit were boiling like a volcano eruption, and his cultivation was running to the extreme. Over the years, he had killed countless old monsters, but he had never encountered any opponent of the same realm who could fight with him. The appearance of Ling Xuanzi also made him realize the long-lost desire to fight. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the two fought again, and the situation was even more terrifying than before. It was like two dominators of the great Tao were fighting, and heaven and earth were being destroyed. Run! This is not a battle between emperors, it's obviously a battle between deities. Retreat! Retreat quickly! In the faraway area, countless cultivators fled, not daring to stay any longer, and left in a panic with shock and fear. Only a small group of people were still reluctantly watching the battle, but they were also dancing on the tip of a knife, taking great risks, and were already ready to escape at any time. Fairy Meng, let's go! Yen Wan was about to cry, trembling all over, and she was so scared that her soul almost left her body. Such an emperor battle could simply scare people to death. The ironic thing was that those young geniuses that had always been around Meng Lianqing had already escaped without a trace at some point in time. I'm not leaving. Meng Lianqing's beautiful face was pale, and her slender body was stiff. It was obvious that she had suffered a great shock. But she was a dazzling figure in the quasi-emperor realm, and she was hiding far away from the battlefield, so she could barely persist. Why did she persist? She couldn't explain it herself. It was like a knot in her heart, forcing her to want to know if that person could be defeated. It was like an obsession. As for her unwillingness, when she saw Lin Sun attack, when she saw his godlike might of a great emperor that stood above the 9 heavens, it was all gone. Then, I'll stay as well. Yen Wan gritted his teeth, and revealed a resolute expression as if he was going to die. Meng Lianqing only glanced at him, and then her gaze returned to the battle in the distance. The two of them were indeed like supreme deities, fighting from the sky to the ground, and everywhere they passed, there was collapse and destruction. If one looked carefully, they would see that Ling Xuanzi's power was growing sharper and stronger, but under Lin Sun's attacks, he fell into a state of struggling. Boom! The light of the Tao erupted and illuminated the 9 heavens. Suppressed by Lin Sun's punch, Ling Xuanzi was smashed into the ground from the void, causing dust and earth to rumble. The spectators in the distance all gasped and felt cold hands and feet. They were shocked by Lin Sun's unparalleled power. Ling Xuanzi, bring out your true abilities. If you continue to hide, you're bound to lose. Lin Sun stood in the void, and his whole body was covered with flowing Taoist light. He was dazzling, and his divine power was world-shaking. Of course, a divine ray of light flashed out from the ground, and it revealed Ling Xuanzi's figure. Even though he was in a slightly sorry state, there wasn't a single ripple on his face, and he was neither sad nor happy. Little junior brother, you probably don't know that after I became an emperor, I wrote the 10,000 Tao Emperor scripture to use the meaning of 10,000 Taos. In the countless years of suppression, I painstakingly studied it, and after thousands of deductions, I finally perfected it. Now, senior brother will let you see what is meant by my Tao. Ling Xuanzi spoke frankly with assurance. Moreover, a dignified aura that seemed as if it reigned above the heavens and ruled over all Taos gradually emerged from his body. The great Tao is like a cage. Ling Xuanzi suddenly slapped out with his palm, and thousands of rays of light fell down, condensing into a cage that covered the sky and the sun, emitting boundless light. It gave people the feeling that the great Tao had appeared as a cage that wanted to restrain the world. If one said, What Ling Xuanzi used before was the method of controlling 10,000 daos. Then what he used at this moment was the power above 10,000 daos, as if he was the ruler of the heavens, wielding the Tao to kill. Good timing. Lin Sun's black hair fluttered as he slashed out with his palm and fingers like a sword. This sword strike was extremely ordinary and didn't carry any sword aura, yet it seemed to have converged a myriad of daos into one and fused them into this sword strike. 10,000 swords into one. Lin Sun had deduced for many years, smelting the 5 supreme sword scriptures, weeding through the old and bringing forth the new, creating the sword Tao profundity that truly belonged to him. When the sword was unleashed, heaven and earth changed and everything collapsed. The cage that seemed to be condensed by 10,000 daos was shattered by the sword, splashing into a torrent of light that filled the sky. As for Ling Xuanzi, he was sent flying backward once again. His clothes were torn, his long hair was scattered, and blood was dripping from the corner of his mouth. At this moment, the expressions of everyone who watched this scene changed. Ling Xuanzi had been suppressed by Lin Sun from the beginning. They fought from the ground to the sky, and many times in a row. He couldn't block Lin Sun's attacks. He was either pushed back or struck to the ground. Up until now, he had already displayed his great Tao Emperor scripture, but it was still broken by a single sword. In the eyes of those emperors, Ling Xuanzi's strength had already reached an unimaginable level. Whether it was his soul, body, or cultivation, they could be said to be omnipotent, like a ruler. But Lin Sun was even more terrifying. His strength had been suppressing Ling Xuanzi from beginning to end. Lin Sun's great Tao had always been simple, direct, and natural. Especially the previous sword. It was ordinary, but it had the power to destroy 10,000 daos. Even these emperors couldn't describe this sword with words. To put it bluntly, this sword was like Tao, unparalleled. Yes, that was an unparalleled sword. Any power in front of this sword was pale and powerless. Ling Xuanzi was pushed back with blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. This already proved that there was still a gap between his strength and Lin Sun's. No one dared to believe it. How powerful was Ling Xuanzi, a Tao master, to be able to describe the mysteries of the great Tao and control the power of 10,000 daos. Even though he had been suppressed for countless years and had only broken out of seclusion today, he was still firmly suppressed by his junior brother? How terrifying was Lin Sun's attainments in Emperor's Tao. At this moment, even Ling Xuanzi himself was stunned, as if he didn't dare to believe it. After that, his eyes erupted with a shocking divine light as he stared fixedly at Lin Sun. His expression that had always been calm and composed had become solemn for the first time. He realized that he seemed to have underestimated the foundation and strength of his junior brother from the beginning. Genius 1 Second Remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 2433. Ling Xuanzi's heart couldn't calm down either. The previous 4 rounds of discussion had allowed him to understand Lin Sun's path of cultivation, and he even had insight into the various powers Lin Sun had comprehended on the path of cultivation. He'd originally thought that he who'd searched for everything during the 5th round would be able to firmly defeat this little junior brother of his. But the result, it was completely beyond his expectations. But in an instant, Ling Xuanzi deduced the reason. After Lin Sun became an emperor, he had experienced a transformation that he didn't know about, and this transformation was filled with great mysteries. Nirvana of freedom. The eternal lotus. Ling Xuanzi had a strong premonition that Lin Sun's path above the emperor realm was destined to be related to nirvana of freedom. However, even with his intelligence and wisdom, he was unable to deduce anything more. He didn't know that Lin Sun had reconstructed a complete path of cultivation in the world of samsara, and his cultivation could be said to be the best since ancient times. He also didn't know how terrifying and abnormal the tribulation Lin Sun had encountered on the Great Wall of Starry Sky was when he became an emperor. He also didn't know that the slanting moon and 3 stars pattern left by the owner of the core dimension in order for Lin Sun to pass the tribulation successfully was actually a willpower that belonged to the owner of the core dimension. It was this willpower that defeated the attacks from the other side of the starry sky. And it was the experience of nirvana of freedom that made Lin Sun's path of cultivation truly unique since ancient times. However, not being able to figure out the mystery didn't mean that Ling Xuanzi would admit defeat. Soon, he took a deep breath, and his handsome face returned to calmness. He looked at Lin Sun in the distance and said, "Junior brother, if you can block the next attack, I promise that you can do whatever you want to me." His words were full of determination. "Still not giving up?" Lin Sun asked. "Master has suppressed me for countless years, but he hasn't changed my will. How much do you think those little twists and turns can affect me?" Ling Xuanzi said calmly. His black hair started to gradually turn gray, yet his eyes grew sharper and sharper. His clothes fluttered while a peerless force of will shot into the sky, and it was like a shapeless hand that drew the laws of the Grand Tao from all directions. The entire Beast Saint's secret realm trembled at this moment. Visible to the naked eye, rumbling energy surged toward Ling Xuanzi like a surging tide. Rumble! Heaven and earth rumbled, and this part of the world shook. The entire Demon Saint mystic realm was vast and boundless, but now, it seemed to be under Ling Xuanzi's control alone. The emperor-level figure in the distance felt his heart tremble, about to collapse. This was the power of an entire world. How could it be controlled by a single person? This was too terrifying. When he looked at Ling Xuanzi again, his figure was tall and graceful, yet he was like the backbone of this world. As he breathed, he controlled the myriad of streams in the universe and swallowed the Grand Tao in all directions, and his might was so magnificent that it pressed down upon this world. His long gray hair was exceptionally eye-catching. At this moment, Lin Sun showed a rare solemn expression. Only he, who was at the Zhu Shui Emperor realm, could best understand how terrifying the power that Ling Xuanzi controlled was. If it was any other ordinary 8th-level Emperor realm cultivator, they would definitely be completely intimidated and crushed. Whoosh! Lin Sun stretched his body, and a roar that sounded like raging waves came from his body. His acupoints, meridians, internal organs, and natal Emperor realm were all activated at this moment, causing his body to become dazzling and illusory. Body like a furnace, Grand Tao as the abyss. This was also the first time that Lin Sun unleashed his cultivation to the fullest in a battle of the same cultivation realm. It was all because his 4th senior brother was too strong. Go! Ling Xuanzi's sleeves fluttered as he controlled heaven and earth, and he waved his palm. Boom! The power of the Grand Tao that came from all directions seemed to have found a vent, and it instantly engulfed Lin Sun like a flood. From afar, it looked like the entire Demon Saint's secret realm was trying to erase Lin Sun. Seeing this scene, everyone was dumbfounded. It was as if the power of the heavens had appeared and was targeting Lin Sun. Open! At the same time, Lin Sun used his fingers as a sword and slashed out. In an instant, boundless Emperor Tao power surged out of his body, turning into a brilliant sword qi that illuminated the sky. This sword qi created the world, mountains and rivers, the sky and earth, the sun, moon, and stars, and it reflected the image of the world. It was a spectacular sight. Where the sword qi slashed out, a disaster scene of everything being destroyed appeared. One sword qi destroyed life and death. Boom! When this sword slashed out, the world seemed to be split in half. The unparalleled sword intent pierced through everything and spread across the sky. The entire Demon Saint's secret realm fell into a great roar. The sky collapsed, and the sun and moon turned upside down. It was a terrifying scene. Even though the Emperor realm cultivators had already retreated far away, they still felt a stabbing pain in their hearts. They couldn't even open their eyes, and they couldn't help but be shocked. It's useless. The Grand Tao that you control and the thousands of techniques that you use are just borrowing. What's the use no matter how strong you are? Lin Sun's indifferent voice resounded through the sky. Using thousands of Daos and controlling thousands of techniques was Ling Xuanzi's Grand Tao. However, in Lin Sun's opinion, this Grand Tao was obviously inferior to his own Grand Tao. Just like the Sage Tao grand vows of the two, one was to see the heavens, the other was to see the heavens, and the Grand Tao was to see the Grand Tao. The difference between them was like the difference between heaven and earth, and the difference was obvious. Is that so? Ling Xuanzi frowned and attacked with all his might, using the heavenly cycle force to kill Lin Sun. Boom, boom, boom. All kinds of terrifying Grand Tao power turned into various supreme techniques that were used by Ling Xuanzi and blasted towards Lin Sun. Lin Sun didn't dare to be careless, or rather, from this moment on, he had already released his cultivation. Every move he made was filled with dense sword qi that swept across the sky. Although it felt like he was fighting against the entire demonic saint's secret realm alone, he gave off an unstoppable and indestructible aura. Boom! Before long, the sky collapsed and the clouds dispersed. Lin Sun broke through all obstacles and charged towards Ling Xuanzi like a bolt of lightning that tore the sky apart. Ling Xuanzi's expression finally changed. His long hair flew backwards, and he suddenly condensed a seal and struck it out. Crack! The seal exploded, but it couldn't stop Lin Sun's attack at all. Lin Sun's sword had already slashed down from the sky. In an instant, Ling Xuanzi displayed at least 100 kinds of mysterious and unpredictable defensive techniques, layer upon layer, and evolved in front of him. Lin Sun's sword slashed down, and the explosions were like thunder. The layers of defense were crushed one by one, and endless light rain and turbulence burst out. Bang! In the end, Ling Xuanzi was sent flying by the sword. Although the power of the sword had been mostly resolved, it still left a bloody sword mark in front of Ling Xuanzi. His skin and flesh were torn, and he flew out fiercely. He coughed up blood, and his face had become pale. His long gray hair was scattered, and there was not only a dignified look in his eyes, but also a touch of shock that couldn't be concealed. It seemed that he didn't expect that his strength was still suppressed by Lin Sun's after fighting to this point. He couldn't believe it at all. At this moment, Lin Sun's breath was a little heavy, but his eyes were more profound and bright, and the depths of his pupils seemed to be burning with the raging fighting intent. The world was silent. Ling Xuanzi wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, looked at Lin Sun calmly, and said, "Little junior brother, in the countless years I've been suppressed, I've tempered a breath of sword qi with my own state of mind and willpower. If you can take it, I, Ling Xuanzi, will admit defeat completely." There was a touch of determination between his eyebrows. As his voice fell, he took a sharp breath. Like a rock swallowing the sea, all the power of the Great Way covering the demon saint's secret realm from all directions was continuously swallowed into his body like a torrent. The world seemed to be drained of vitality. Everything withered and the void collapsed. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun felt a strong sense of danger. It was the first time that he had felt such pressure since the beginning of the battle. Without hesitation, he rushed over. Ling Xuanzi smiled slightly, looking ethereal and calm, and said softly. A slender and translucent sword qi swept out, revealing a kind of sharpness that was enough to amaze the ages and illuminate the sky. Vaguely, there seemed to be a clear sword cry that sounded like it came from the immortal world and didn't seem to belong to the human world. Countless eyes met, but they couldn't see the sword clearly at all. They could only feel a kind of awe and fear from the bottom of their hearts. This sword was imprinted with Ling Xuanzi's spirit, which was condensed by countless years of tempering. His state of mind, will, and great way were all presented in it. Seeing this sword was like seeing the sky. This sword was called the Constitution of Heaven. Lin Sun's pupils suddenly shrank, and his body was stinging. While he was still on the way, He ran all his power to the extreme and turned his body into a furnace. And in his hand he also made a sword cut. 10,000 swords in one. But at this moment, this boundlessly terrifying attack was instantly shattered by the slender and translucent sword Qi, causing it to explode. Rise! Without hesitation, Lin Sun made dozens of sword cut. Bang bang bang! The sword Qi crisscrossed. After only a few breaths, the slender sword Qi crushed all Lin Sun's sword Qi and went straight to Lin Sun. That scene could be described as soul-stirring. Seeing the slender sword Qi approaching, Lin Sun took a deep breath, and a touch of determination flashed in his eyes. He stretched out his palms, and suddenly a devouring abyss emerged in his hands. All his spirit, and all his cultivation were integrated into it. Boom! It was like the sky was falling and the earth was sinking. The whole secret realm of demon saints shook violently at this moment, as if hundreds of thousands of volcanoes erupted at the same time. The terrifying and boundless turbulence swept across the 9 heavens and 10 earths, drowning the world. The light was so bright that it was a vast expanse of whiteness. The remaining spectators, regardless of their cultivation, all lost their senses as if they had lost their senses and could no longer sense anything. Who won and who lost? After a long time, when the smoke and dust dissipated, people's senses gradually recovered, and their vision became clear little by little. The world was like a ruin, silent and collapsed. A tall figure, like an immortal furnace, surrounded by dazzling brilliance, stood in the void. He put his palms together to resist a slender and translucent sword Qi. It couldn't be shaken. Just like a god. Let me explain one thing to you seriously. In the year-end inventory activity, please be sure to vote for the free tickets, and free tickets for the best author. Yesterday, a lot of friends slipped and voted for the works of the author. Goldfish, I want to cry but have no tears. At last. Please click on the voting interface and have a look at your account. There is an item called Free Tickets. Throw as many tickets as you have. Those are all free. Remember, you have to vote for the Best Author category. Finally, the above wailing is free. Chapter 2434. Previously, in the eyes of most people, Ling Xuanzi, who had once transformed into the Lord Tao Master, had unleashed his full power at the very end. It could be said to be peerless and unparalleled in the world. No matter how strong Lin Sun was, he shouldn't be able to block it. Even if he didn't die, he would at least be heavily injured. Most of the emperors had the same thought. Ling Xuanzi's final strike was too powerful. It was enough to slash through all enemies and make any emperor feel helpless and despair, let alone Lin Sun. But the sword was blocked. Looking at the dazzling figure that stood in the broken world, everyone was dumbfounded, and their minds were in a daze. Even Ling Xuanzi's sword that used up all his cultivation was blocked head-on. Then, who in this world could be Lin Sun's opponent? Before the 5 rounds, no one thought that Lin Sun could win. That was because of their absolute confidence and worship towards the Lord Tao Master. But now, the 5 rounds had ended and the result was that the Lord Tao Master had lost again and again. It was hard for them to accept. Meng Lianqing's mind was blank and she was in a daze. Many years ago, she and Lin Sun were of the same generation and they competed here. Today, many years later, she and Lin Sun were like strangers. One was an Emperor Realm powerhouse with the power to pierce through the heavens and earth. He was unparalleled and oppressive. The other could only look up to him like an ant on the ground. Bang! An explosion resounded and broke the silence between heaven and earth. The thin and translucent sword Qi in Lin Sun's palm exploded into a rain of light and scattered through the gaps between his fingers. In the distance, Ling Xuanzi was stunned and his handsome face flickered. His clothes were tattered, his hair was disheveled and his face was abnormally pale. That strike from before was imprinted with his essence, Qi, and spirit. It also contained his Tao, will, and will. Moreover, along with the shattering of this sword, the persistence, pride, and willpower he'd held onto for countless years seemed to have been shattered along with it. An unprecedented sense of loss surged in his heart, causing him to be stunned for a long time. To be defeated in the struggle for the great Tao, this kind of blow was too heavy. Lin soon took a deep breath, and a glaring trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Although he managed to block the sword in the end, he was still injured. This also caused him to look at Ling Xuanzi with a strange gaze. It was undeniable that this fourth senior brother was truly terrifying. In the competition between grand daos of the same realm, could anyone in the entire universe accomplish this? No. Lin Sun was sure that there was no peer who could compete with him on the starry sky ancient path. I actually lost, Ling Xuanzi spoke after a long time, and his expression was gloomy as if he'd lost something. He stared blankly into the distance and muttered, I was born with the root of wisdom, and I was able to discern the words of others, understand all things, and discern the profundities of the grand Tao contained in all things. My parents were just ordinary peddlers. Who would have thought that their son would be like a monster? On the night he was born, they threw me into the wilderness outside the city. At that time, it was snowing heavily on the mountain, and the wind was bone-chilling. Although I have the root of wisdom, I was still a newborn baby. He let out a long sigh, and his eyes were filled with reminiscence. Lin Sun listened quietly. He had seen that Ling Xuanzi had suffered a great blow. Later, when I was about to freeze to death, an old monster appeared. He took me away and raised me with all kinds of spiritual medicines every day. Speaking of this, he looked up at Lin Sun, Junior brother, do you think it's very ungrateful of me to call my savior an old monster? Lin Sun frowned. Before he could speak, Ling Xuanzi's eyes showed deep hatred, and he said in a low voice, But later on, when I was born, that old monster soaked me in a medicinal cauldron. It was also at that time that I found out that old bastard regarded me as a catalyst and wanted to refine me into a cauldron of medicinal pills. Duan Ling Tian sighed. Lin Sun was shocked and his black eyes surged. He finally understood. It's a pity that the old bastard didn't know that as early as those days when I was adopted by him, I had already known all the ancient books on cultivation collected by him. Even the Tao he sought was thoroughly seen through by me. Then, when he was not paying attention, I secretly escaped from the medicinal cauldron. Ling Xuanzi laughed hoarsely. A baby of only 100 days, abandoned by his parents as a monster. It was not easy to save him, but I met an old bastard who regarded me as a medicine guide. He stopped smiling and said calmly, From that day on, I hid in a cave in the wilderness, drinking the morning dew and concentrating on cultivation. 3 years later, I found that old bastard and killed him and all his disciples. Then, I burned down his Taoist temple. Then, I went to find my parents who gave birth to me. Hearing this, Lin Sun's heart tightened. Ling Xuanzi let out a long sigh and said, Who would have thought that when I found them, they were beaten to death by a profligate son in the city a year ago? It was said that because my mother was too beautiful, the profligate son set his eyes on her and wanted to rape her, but she bit off his tongue and beat him to death. Even my father was implicated and his entire family was annihilated. His eyes were filled with disappointment and unwillingness, as well as a type of hatred. Little junior brother, do you know? At that time, I was simply about to go mad. I just wanted to personally ask them why they abandoned me in the wilderness, why they could be so heartless as my parents, but it just so happened that they died. Dead. He gritted his teeth so hard that they were almost broken. His handsome face was full of ferocity, and his whole body was full of violent aura. Lin Sun narrowed his black eyes slightly, and then? Ling Xuanzi was silent for a moment, and the hostility all over his body was swept away. He became calm and composed and said with a bright smile, I hid in that city for 3 years. When I was 6 years old, I went to that rich playboy's clan alone and killed them all. No matter if they were men or women, old or young, I didn't let a single one of them go. Blood flowed everywhere, but I still couldn't vent my hatred. Why? Why did I suffer so many misfortunes as soon as I was born? From then on, as long as I met someone who was bad to me, I would kill them. I would never give them a chance to live again. Speaking of this, he looked at Lin Sun and said, "Junior brother, do you think what I did was right?" Before Lin Sun answered, he shook his head with a smile. "You don't have to say it. I don't want to hear it. Whether it was right or wrong, I only know that they should be killed." "This is your inner demon," Lin Sun said after a moment of silence. Ling Xuanzi was stunned, and then he couldn't help but roar with laughter. All those years ago, Master said the same thing as well. Unfortunately, both you and Master utterly don't know how it feels to be abandoned by one's parents and treated as a medicinal catalyst by one's savior. He took a deep breath and said calmly, "If this is my inner demon, I won't change even if I'm suppressed for eternity and killed." Lin Sun said, "You lost." Ling Xuanzi was stunned as if he didn't expect that at this time, Lin Sun didn't care about his past at all. However, Lin Sun didn't care about his past at all. He only cared about the outcome of this discussion. This made his chest stuffy, and he almost couldn't breathe. He couldn't help but say, "Junior brother, is that all you care about?" Lin Sun said coldly, "Why? Are you trying to win my sympathy and ask me to let you go?" Ling Xuanzi took a deep breath and said, "I've already said that I've lost, so I'll let you do whatever you want to me. I don't have to suppress my cultivation to the 4th level if I go back on my word. Do you really think you can win under such circumstances?" "In the end," he said self-deprecatingly, "I just want to have a good talk. There are not many people in this world who can talk to me," Lin Sun said calmly. "Even if you don't suppress your realm, you will lose for sure. I might as well tell you that when I entered this place, I've already set up a formation that can kill Emperor Ancestor." Ling Xuanzi's expression stagnated, and his eyes became complicated. He sighed with emotion. "I didn't expect that you would go to so much trouble to deal with me." Lin Sun said, "I have no choice. 4th senior brother, you're extraordinary. If I want to defeat you, I don't dare to say that I can subdue you without some backup." Ling Xuanzi sneered. "Are you complimenting me?" Lin Sun said, "You can think so." Ling Xuanzi was silent for a long time and said, "How are you going to deal with me? Kill me? Or cripple me?" Lin Sun raised his hand, and the Tower of Endless emerged. "Go in by yourself. When I see Master, Master will deal with you." Ling Xuanzi's expression was uncertain, and he was rarely angry. "Are you going to suppress me again?" His aura was violent and his eyes were bloodshot. "Junior brother, are you really not worried that I'll go back on my words?" The atmosphere suddenly became oppressive and tense at this moment. Lin Sun said calmly, "I'm giving you a chance to live. Otherwise, according to the order of 2nd senior brother, you'll have to die." Ling Xuanzi stared at Lin Sun for a long time, and then he let out a long sigh and handed a mysterious crescent and 3 stars jade pendant to Lin Sun. "This is the border key that controls the entrance and exit of the secret realm of heart. Since you're here, you should keep it. After that..." He turned around and walked to the Tower of Endless. There was only indescribable loneliness and sorrow on his face. Lin Sun glanced at the border key and suddenly said, "Wait." Ling Xuanzi stopped and said helplessly, "I've already let you do whatever you want to me, and I've never gone back on my words. Junior brother, what else do you want?" "I'll ask you again, why did you reveal the inheritance of 2nd senior brother?" Lin Sun asked. Ling Xuanzi was stunned. Only then did he realize that Lin Sun had never believed his words from the beginning, and an indescribable feeling of sadness suddenly surged in his heart. "As the successor of Fang Siyuan, I'll tell you for the last time that no matter how wicked I am, I'll never lie to my fellow disciples." His voice was resolute. After that, he went straight to the Tower of Endless, and his figure suddenly turned into a stream of light. "Fourth senior brother, if I've offended you before, I apologize." Seeing that Ling Xuanzi's figure was about to disappear, Lin Sun's voice suddenly sounded. "If you really regard me as your junior brother, from today on, cultivate in the Tower of Endless. When I see master and second senior brother, I'll plead for you." Hearing this, Ling Xuanzi didn't say a word, and his figure disappeared straight into the Tower of Endless. No one noticed that after listening to Lin Sun's words, there was a faint curve at the corner of his mouth. He seemed to be smiling. Genius 1 second to remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 2435. The world withered and the mountains and rivers collapsed. Lin Sun put away the Tower of Endless and let out a long sigh in his heart. Ling Xuanzi's childhood experience reminded him of himself. He was also born, but his spiritual vein was dug away by the enemy. He grew up in the dark mine prison. Until now, he didn't even know whether his parents were alive or dead. Unlike Ling Xuanzi, he had Master Lu by his side, while Ling Xuanzi could only rely on himself. Lin Sun thought of Yunqin Bai. He was born with a sword bone, but his family was ruined and his fate was beyond his control. After a long time, Lin Sun turned around and looked into the distance. Only a small group of people were left amongst the countless living beings that were spectating the battle earlier, and most of them had fled in panic during the battle just now. In addition to several emperors, what surprised Lin Sun was that Meng Lianqing was still there, but she seemed to be out of her wits. After thinking for a while, he walked over. "Fairy Meng, he's here," Yan Wan stammered, his eyes filled with fear and uneasiness. Before entering the ultimate, he dared to call Lin Sun brother, but now how dare he? At the same time, Meng Lianqing seemed to wake up from a dream. She looked up and saw Lin Sun coming towards her. She was stunned for a moment and her heart tightened. What was he going to do? The emperors were even more nervous than her and Yan Wan. Before Ling Xuanzi showed up, they all planned to attack Lin Sun. Seeing Lin Sun walking over, it was too late to leave. They were all on tenterhooks. Lin Sun ignored them and went straight to Meng Lianqing. "I've said before that I don't care about what happened in the past." Then, he looked at Yan Wan and smiled. "Fellow Taoist, it's fate that we met. Take this scripture and cultivate it well." He flicked his finger and an inheritance imprint turned into a white light and poured into Yan Wan's mind. Yan Wan only felt a buzzing sound in her head, and an incomparably vast inheritance power surged into her sea of consciousness. Countless profound mysteries of the great Tao floated up and down like tides. After a long time, when Yan Wan came back to her senses, she saw that Lin Sun had disappeared. He couldn't help feeling disappointed. "Where's that senior?" He left. Meng Lianqing's eyes were filled with emotions. At this moment, the obsession and shadow in her heart had been dispelled a long time ago, and her entire body had relaxed. She deeply realized that she and that person weren't in the same world anymore. Now that he had come to terms with it, he was at ease. "Gone?" Yan Wan's heart was in turmoil. "You are the Spirit Leaf Clan's Yan Wan?" Meng Lianqing asked, her eyes sizing up Yan Wan. "Yes." Yan Wan hurriedly nodded, her eyes not even daring to look at Meng Lianqing. "Let's go too." Meng Lianqing turned and left. Us?" Yan Wan stared blankly for a moment, before his heart filled with joy. He hurriedly chased after Fairy Meng. Fairy Meng had actually taken the initiative to invite him along. This made him feel as if he was dreaming. "In the future, if you have time, you can come to the Golden Phoenix race to find me. We can spar and discuss the Tao together," Meng Lianqing said softly on the way. Yan Wan was so excited that her whole body was trembling. She nodded firmly in agreement. He vaguely felt that the reason why Meng Lianqing treated him differently was because of Lin Sun. "Senior, don't worry. Yan Wan, will not let you down." Yan Wan swore in her heart. In the Demon Saint's secret land, Lin Sun strolled leisurely in the place where he had fought in the past. He was seriously injured, but it would take several days for him to fully recover. During this period, he planned to stay in the Demon Saint's secret land. When he recovered, he would cross the Soul Oblivion Sea and go to Xiao Empire to have a look. Aren't you afraid that you can't suppress Ling Xuanzi in the future? The lawless bell hanging on his hair asked. He has already lost the battle of the Great Tao. As long as I am alive, it will be difficult for him to get out of this Tower of Endless. Lin Sun said casually. Although his fourth senior brother could be called a rare genius, Lin Sun was confident that he could always suppress him on the road of the Great Tao. This was a kind of invincible self-confidence. Suddenly, the lawless bell seemed to sense something and said, "In a canyon far away, someone is talking about your name." Lin Sun was stunned. In the canyon. He won, Big Brother won. Old Toad beamed with joy, as if it had defeated that Lord Tao Master. Alu also grinned. "It's a pity that I can't see your invincible Emperor realm," Little Silver sighed. On his shoulder, the sky-splitting butterfly danced with joy. "As long as we win, the process doesn't matter. What did I say before? This boy never fights a battle he is not sure of, but you are so nervous." The big black bird squinted and said leisurely. In this cheerful atmosphere, who said coldly, "Have you ever thought about how to meet Child Lin when you are trapped in this canyon?" His words stunned Old Toad and the others, and then their hearts sank. The restrictive power around the canyon was extremely strange, like a big inverted bowl, covering the whole canyon and couldn't be broken from the inside. Moreover, it isolated thoughts and sound, making it difficult for them to ask Lin Sun for help. According to Hu's speculation, perhaps only by stepping into the Emperor realm could they get out of this canyon, otherwise they would be trapped here for the rest of their lives. "What should we do?" Old Toad was dumbfounded and rubbed his hands anxiously. The others looked at each other and felt stifled. In the end it was all for naught? Damn it, unless God has eyes, we're all finished. The big black bird cursed angrily. Just then, boom! There was a sudden deafening roar around the canyon, and the restrictive power covering the canyon suddenly produced countless cracks like a spider web. Then, there was a burst of explosion, and a rain of light splashed. The restrictive power that had trapped Hu and the others for so many years was completely broken at this moment. Has the heavens really opened their eyes? The big black bird cried out strangely. The others were also stunned and almost couldn't believe it was true. Then, they heard a familiar laugh. "Miss Hu, Old Toad, Alu, Little Silver, Big Blackbird. It's really you." Looking up, they saw a tall figure coming from a distance. Who else could it be but Lin Sun? "Big Brother!" Old Toad rushed out and hugged Lin Sun, crying out loudly. Bang! Alu also came. He stretched out his rock-like arms and hugged Lin Sun and Old Toad together, saying, "Big Brother, I missed you so much." Whoosh whoosh. Little Silver and sky-splitting demonic butterfly were forcibly stuffed into the arms of these men and stood on Lin Sun's shoulder, beaming with joy. In the distance, Who couldn't help but feel moved when she saw this. Her emotions rose and fell, and her beautiful eyes rippled with extraordinary splendor. She could still be considered reserved, but in her heart, it was difficult for her to control the excitement of reuniting with him after a long time. Only the big black bird walked over with a big black pot on its back, holding its head high, and said disdainfully, "It's improper for several grown men to hug each other. Disgusting." Clang! All of a sudden, the big black pot on its back flew up and hit its head hard, making it see stars and stagger. Lin Sun said with a smile, "You haven't changed, bird. You're still so mean." The big black bird immediately became quiet, because it suddenly realized that Lin Sun was not what he used to be. Finally, Lin Sun extricated himself from the embrace of Old Toad and Alu. Looking at the snot and tears on his clothes, he said grumpily, "Is it necessary?" With a flash of Taoist light around him, his clothes were immediately clean again. Old Toad blew his nose and shouted, "Brother, we haven't seen you for so many years. We miss you, so we want to borrow your clothes to wipe our tears and snot." "Of course." Little Silver and Sky-Splitting Demonic Butterfly said in unison, "Disgusting." Alu scratched his head and grinned. Lin soon looked at who was walking over from a distance, and then at the familiar faces around him. He was also filled with emotion. It had been decades since they parted from Kunlun ruins. How could he not be happy and surprised? When everyone calmed down, Lin soon asked, "Why are you trapped here?" Ahu explained the reason. Simply speaking, they'd used the spatial passageway at the source of the flying immortal river to come here all those years ago, but after entering the Demon Saint's secret realm, they'd accidentally been trapped in this gorge. It was simply an undeserved calamity. Through their search in these past few years, they'd noticed that this gorge was originally the place of closed-door cultivation of a cultivator called Qi Jun. There weren't any fortuitous encounters within it, but it was covered in terrifying restrictions. So long as one entered the gorge and didn't possess sufficient strength, then one would be unable to leave the gorge. Lin soon immediately understood. Qi Jun. This was the Taoist name of the fifth successor of Mount Fangsuan, who was also his fifth senior brother. It made sense. The secret realm of Demon Saint was originally called the Secret Realm of Fangsuan. The orthodoxy of Mount Fangsuan was entrenched here, so it was reasonable for a group of successors to cultivate here. If it wasn't for the enemy's attack that caused Mount Fangsuan to collapse, the current secret realm of Demon Saint wouldn't be like this. "Come, let's drink. All these years, I've traveled the starry sky and collected a lot of divine wine, as well as some delicacies that you've never tasted before." Lin Sun was happy to reunite with his old friends. He immediately took out bottles of fine wine, some precious spiritual fruits, and all kinds of delicacies, and invited Old Toad and the others to drink. Everyone was in high spirits and helped to prepare. When Lin Sun took out all kinds of divine bird and auspicious beast meat, Old Toad and the others were dazzled and surprised. Of course, in the end, they all looked like they were drooling. "Leaf, Wu Kei, Little Five." Lin Sun called out Little Five, Wu Kei, Woody Spiritual Bow, and Leaf, the Sword Spirit, to drink and have fun together. They drank and chatted, talking about what they had experienced over the years. Sometimes they sighed and sometimes they laughed. For a time, the canyon was very lively. When old friends reunited, they should drink and have a good time. What's more, Old Toad and the others were Lin Sun's brothers who had gone through life and death together when he was young. Now that they were finally reunited, Lin Sun was overjoyed. Don't forget to vote for the best author. There's a free ticket every day. Genius 1 second to remember this website address. Mobile version. Chapter 2436. At that time, they were young and full of mettle. Now that they met again, after experiencing the ups and downs of the world, they drank and chatted with each other, but mostly they sighed with emotion. In the end, Old Toad, Alu and the others got drunk and fell asleep one by one. Little Silver and Little Five were still drinking. The sky-rending demonic butterfly, Little Tian, supported Little Silver, while the Sword Spirit, Leaf, and Wu Kei supported Little Five. Neither side was willing to submit to the other. The big black bird was going to be the referee, but it was chased away by both sides. This thieving bird had been fanning the flames and wanted to see the world in chaos. How could it be a referee? In the end, the lawless bell came forward to be the referee, which satisfied both sides. In the distance, seeing this scene, Lin Sun, who was lying lazily on the grass with his arms as a pillow, couldn't help but smile. "Child, should I call you Junior Uncle from now on?" Next to him, Ahu sat on one side with her fair and tender hands around her knees. Her exquisite and beautiful face glowed with a holy and ethereal luster under the starlight in the dark night. Her eyebrows were as black as ink, and her long, silky hair was casually tied up in a bun. Her starry eyes were clear and bright, and her rosy lips were slightly upturned in a faint smile. Her figure could be said to be perfect. Her shoulders were as sharp as a knife, her collarbone was exquisite, her waist was as thin as silk, and her chest was full and heart-stirring. Among all the women Lin soon knew, Ahu was a unique beauty with the appearance of a fairy and the charm of a witch. Her every move was peerless and graceful. "Junior uncle?" Lin Sun shook his head quickly. "Forget it. We're friends, so we should treat each other as equals." He already knew that Ahu was a registered disciple of senior sister Juanhuan. According to the seniority of Fangsuan orthodoxy, she could indeed call him junior uncle. "If master finds out, he'll punish me." Ahu's laughter was pleasant and magnetic. Her crescent eyes were narrowed, which was very beautiful. "I'll plead on your behalf." Lin Sun also smiled. In the cultivation world, seniority had always been very messy. For example, if it was during the primeval times, his senior brothers and senior sisters were on equal footing with those extraordinary figures of the same generation. In terms of seniority, Lin Sun's seniority was definitely higher than most of the old guys in the heavens. "Then I'll continue to address you as young master in the future." Ahu revealed her pearly white teeth, and her smile was like a flower that had just bloomed after the rain, fresh and ethereal. Then Ahu asked about his plans for this trip. Lin Sun thought for a while and said, "Let's go to Xiao Empire first. If possible, I plan to move all the clansmen of Lin family into the secret realm of Heart." Before the fourth senior brother entered the Tower of Infinity, he gave him the realm key that controlled the secret realm of the Heart Core. With this key, the secret realm of Heart would be under Lin Sun's control. Ahu thought about it and said in a low voice, "Young master, have you thought about the future? For example, Old Toad, Alu, and the Big Black Bird?" Lin Sun was in a daze and fell into thought. As early as in the Kunlun ruins, Old Toad, Alu, and the others were already peerless great saints. Over the past decades, their cultivation had also improved by leaps and bounds. Now they were at the third level of the Quasi-Emperor realm, only one step away from the Emperor realm. Little Silver and Little Tian were descendants of spirit-eating insects and sky-splitting butterflies respectively. Their cultivation was different from that of ordinary practitioners, and now they had the combat capability comparable to the peak of the Quasi-Emperor realm. As for the Big Black Bird, this guy was completely different. He was still at the peerless Saint King realm. According to him, for him, he could completely ignore the threshold of the Quasi-Emperor realm, and only needed to wait for an opportunity to break through to the Emperor realm. If Lin Sun wanted to return to the starry ancient path in the future, of course, he could bring Old Toad and the others with him. However, in future actions, he was afraid that he would not be able to care about their cultivation. It depends on their own intentions. Lin Sun made a decision. Of course, he wanted Old Toad and the others to accompany him all the time, but this was doomed to be unrealistic. It should be known that everyone pursued a different path, and the path they would take in the future was also destined to be different. Lin Sun now had enough ability to protect his friends and family. But the key was, would Old Toad and the others be willing to? A few days later, Lin Sun's injuries had recovered to their original state, and there were already signs of a breakthrough in his cultivation. There was no doubt that the battle with fourth senior brother Ling Xuanzi had also made Lin Sun's cultivation reach an astonishing level. It was also on this day that Lin Sun left with Ahu, Old Toad, and Alu. Outside the ultimate, the blue sea was like a wash, and the sky was high and the clouds were wide. In the nearby sea, many figures had already gathered, all of them from the remnant forces of the 10,000 primordial races. Everyone was waiting. A few days ago, the matchless battle that took place in the secret realm of Demon Saint had already set off a great uproar and caused a great sensation. Lord Tao Master, who could be called the Supreme Ruler, had actually been defeated and suppressed by his own junior brother. Such a thing simply subverted the cognition and imagination of those forces. At present, the figures near the ultimate all came to investigate after hearing the news. No one noticed that Lin Sun and the others had already quietly walked out of the ultimate and came to the faraway sea. Since ancient times, it seems to be the nature of every race to watch a show. Ahu couldn't help but laugh. Young master, are you really not going to show yourself so that those watching can worship you? Lin Sun was speechless and shook his head. This is too boring. Let's go. With a wave of his sleeve, the vast universe arc appeared. Young master, you still have this treasure? Ahu's eyes lit up. This vast universe arc was given to Lin Sun by her many years ago. It was just an incomplete ancient treasure, and to the current Lin Sun, it was almost of no help. This treasure has accompanied me for many years, and I'm used to it. I can't bear to discard it. As Lin Sun spoke, he had already boarded the vast universe arc with everyone and flew into the distance. To go to Xiao Empire, they needed to cross the Soul Oblivion Sea. According to Lin Sun's estimation, with the speed of the vast universe arc, it would take at least 10 days. Fortunately, he wasn't in a hurry. After the time for an incense stick to burn, on the surface of the sea in the distance, strands of dark mist had risen. It wasn't conspicuous at first, but as the treasured ship slowly moved forward, the mist grew more and more. It was misty and illusory, dark and deep, and it caused one's hair to stand on end. Burial Sea Tomb. On the vast universe arc, Lin Sun recognized at a glance that they were about to enter the sea covered by the Burial Sea Tomb. In the past, when he was just a youth at the Sea of Soul Realm, he crossed the Soul Oblivion Sea with Zhao Jingxian and a group of powerhouses from the Heaven's Pivot Holy Ground to the Ultimate Ruins, and he had once entered the Burial Sea Tomb. Even now, Lin Sun couldn't forget this strange, mysterious, and terrifying sea. It was silent there, and it was shrouded in black mist all year round. From time to time, some broken ancient corpses could be seen floating on the surface of the sea, and they hadn't decayed even after thousands of years. There were also mysterious altars built with all kinds of rare stones. They were ancient and desolate, and they seemed to have existed since ancient times. When one looked over, one's field of vision would change. It was like the stars were moving, and the passage of time caused everything in the world to change. It made one's soul feel like it was about to sink into it. It was said that such altars could cross time and space and move between the 9 heavens and 10 earth. They could teleport people to any place they wanted to go, and they could even cut through the barriers of the world and connect beyond the cosmic void. At that time, to the young Lin Sun, such an altar was absolutely unimaginable. It was like a divine object that could seize all creation. But to the current him, he already knew that the altar was just an ancient teleportation array. Back then, I met Old Toad in the Soul Oblivion Sea. On the bow of the ship, Lin Sun smiled and looked into the distance. His eyes were filled with emotion. It was also when we returned from the Ultimate Ruins that Miss Ah who took me and Old Toad to hide in the Burial Sea Tomb. That was how we avoided a great pursuit. Ahu pursed her lips and smiled. However, Old Toad revealed a rare complex expression. He suddenly said, "Big brother, do you remember that I once told you that after I awakened my consciousness from countless years of silence, I have been wandering in the sea where the Burial Sea Tomb is?" Lin Sun nodded. Of course he remembered. Now, my originally sealed memories have awakened. Old Toad's eyes flickered. And I finally understand why I was silent in this sea a long time ago. Then, Old Toad told him about the past of the Burial Sea Tomb. In the Archean era, the nameless venerable emperor came to the starry sky ancient path with the forbidden power of order. Not long after, a 10-direction Tao war broke out. The ancient desolation was originally the origin of all Taos. But because of the 10-direction Tao war, it completely declined. And the lower realm was formed from the core origin of the ancient desolation. In other words, the lower realm was the core of the origin of all Taos. Back then, the other 8 regions, which were included in the 9 regions like the ancient desolation, sent armies of cultivators to participate in the 10-direction Dao War. It was to invade the ancient desolation, the origin of all Daos. And in order to fight against the nameless venerable emperor, the powerful figures of the ancient desolation gathered on the Great Wall of the Imperial Pass and launched a bloody battle. At the same time, in order to fight against the allied forces of the 8 regions, another group of experts of the ancient desolation gathered and rushed to the battlefield to fight a bloody battle. And the place where they fought was the Burial Sea Tomb. Back then, Old Toad's ancestor had participated in this battle, but unfortunately died in the battle. Before dying, the ancestor of the 3-legged golden toad sealed the memory and aura of Jean D, the only child, with a secret method and hid him in the depths of this battlefield. Knowing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but be surprised. He never thought that the Burial Sea Tomb was a battlefield in the 10-direction Dao War. Moreover, it was specially used to resist the foreign enemies of the 8 regions. Doesn't this mean that most of the resentful spirits and corpses in the Burial Sea Tomb were left by the experts of the allied forces of the 8 regions? Lin Sun asked. Old Toad nodded and said in a low voice, "Back then, there were also many supreme figures of the ancient desolation camp who died in the battle." He didn't expect that his ancestor died in the invasion of the allied forces of the 8 regions in the 10-direction Dao War. No wonder this place is so strange and terrible. After so many years, there are still countless resentful spirits and corpses gathered here. Lin Sun's black eyes were deep. It was also at this time. On the road ahead, on the deathly silent Black Sea, a low, strange, and frightening horn suddenly sounded. It was like the horn of an army from the purgatory had launched a charge and was about to appear in the world. At the same time, the dark fog that shrouded the world became denser. They had entered the area covered by the Burial Sea Tomb. They had entered the area covered by the Burial Sea Tomb. Mobile version, Chapter 2437. Silently, a dense group of figures appeared in the dark mist above the sea. They were covered in black gas, wore broken armor, and held rusty weapons. They were like an army that had walked out of the netherworld. They looked strange, and almost all of their bodies were incomplete. Some were missing arms and legs, some had rotting chests, some were just skeletons, and some didn't even have a head. But they had one thing in common, and that was that they were filled with an extremely cold killing intent. There were too many of them. They were so dense that they covered the sky and the earth, and their killing intent soared into the sky. They sealed off the sea in front of them. It was as if an army of the netherworld had passed through and wanted to turn this world into a battlefield. Lin Sun wasn't surprised when he saw this. In the Burial Sea burial mound, there were countless vengeful spirit armies like this. He had already experienced them when he was young. Lin Sun didn't attack. He smiled and said, "Come, let me see how much progress you've made in the great path over the years." I'll go first." Old Toad soared into the sky first. His golden robe fluttered, and his handsome face was full of confidence. As he operated his cultivation, a torrent of Zhou void appeared around him, swallowing the stars and spitting out the moon. His eyes were golden like the scorching sun. He slammed his hand down. Boom! A golden palm print that was thousands of meters wide shrouded down. The nearby sea suddenly shook and huge waves splashed. The army of vengeful spirits that had just rushed over were instantly destroyed, and they turned into a black torrent of killing intent that dissipated. "Watch me!" Alu let out a thunderous roar, and his majestic figure that was 8 meters tall stepped into the sky. His muscles that seemed to be made of divine gold bulged, and he released a terrifying and domineering divine brilliance. He also struck out with his palm. In that instant, the surging and violent palm force was like a moving divine mountain that crushed all the way toward the army of vengeful spirits. It forcibly broke open a huge crack in the densely packed figures of vengeful spirits. Ahu smiled, and a trace of joy appeared on her beautiful oval face. Then, she waved her hand. All kinds of divine weapons whistled out. There were densely packed green flying swords, antique scrolls, flaming gourds, thunderous bells. There were dozens of them. When these treasures whistled past, they immediately produced a destructive power, and the figures of resentful spirits exploded and dispersed everywhere. Within a few breaths, the vengeful spirit army that had just appeared was wiped out. Little Silver and Little Tian, who had originally planned to make a move, felt helpless and curled their lips. Only the big black bird rolled its eyes and said disdainfully, "You're just like a monkey. Grandpa Bird wouldn't stoop to such a thing." Just at this moment, a black figure appeared on the surface of the sea far away, standing between the heavens and the earth. Although it was a bit blurry, the aura it exuded was shockingly terrifying. One could vaguely see that he wore a luxurious robe that seemed to be made of immortal gold, flowing with brilliant colors. Only, it was too indistinct, impossible to see clearly. In his hand was a broken purple halberd that carried a mysterious aura of death. It was as if a king of the netherworld had descended upon the world. The pupils of the people who were originally talking constricted at the same time. The aura of an emperor. Even Lin Sun was surprised. Since when did vengeful spirits with Emperor Realm aura appear in the burial sea grave? This was simply inconceivable. Could it be that something shocking has happened here in the past few decades? Lin Sun frowned. He thought of those Emperor Realm figures he had seen in the Ultimate Ruins. Many years ago, it was impossible for such existences to appear in the mortal world. This made Lin Sun acutely realize that some unknown shocking changes had probably happened in the mortal world during the years he had been away. "You actually dared to slaughter the generals under my command. You deserve death." In the distance, the Emperor Realm vengeful spirit let out a cold and dry voice that resounded through the world, causing the sea to roll and the void to wail. Boom! After he finished speaking, he raised his hand and threw out the purple spear in his palm. Like a swift and violent thunderbolt, it tore the sky and shot out. The Emperor Realm aura oppressed Ah Hu and the others so much that they had difficulty breathing. "What the hell is this? How dare you clamor in front of me?" Lin Sun snorted coldly and reached out his hand to grab it. The mighty purple spear was suddenly grasped in his hand. He exerted force in his palm, and the already broken Emperor treasure instantly burst into pieces. In the distance, the Emperor vengeful spirit seemed to be shocked, but he didn't panic. He said, "No matter how strong you are, you'll definitely die after entering the burial sea tomb. Let me give you a piece of advice. It's best that you leave now, otherwise." His voice was filled with disdain and undisguised threat. However, before he could finish speaking, Lin Sun suddenly reached out his hand to grab it. Boom! A huge hand that covered the sky descended from the sky. It was surrounded by dazzling Taoist light and shrouded over. The Emperor Realm vengeful spirit wanted to resist, but the power around him was ruthlessly crushed. His entire figure was like a bug, firmly imprisoned. "You!" he screamed in horror. With a bang, in the next moment, he was caught onto the vast universe arc and dropped in front of Lin Sun. This series of actions happened in the blink of an eye. It was unbelievably fast. When Ah Hu and the others reacted, they looked at Lin Sun differently. Although they already knew that Lin Sun had defeated their fourth senior brother Ling Xuanzi in the Ultimate Ruins and had already stepped into the peak of the fourth level of Emperor Realm. However, they were all trapped in the canyon back then and did not witness Lin Sun's power with their own eyes. It was also at this time that they saw the Emperor Realm vengeful spirit being captured by Lin Sun like a bug. The visual impact was indescribable. Lin Sun's eyes were indifferent as he looked down. Then, he revealed a strange expression. This Emperor Realm vengeful spirit should have been an emperor of the Giant Spirit Blood Clan when it was alive. And the Giant Spirit Blood Clan was a huge emperor clan in the Blood Demon Ancient Region. Back when Lin Sun participated in the 9 Regions battlefield, he already knew that the Blood Demon Ancient Region, Daluo Ancient Region, Extreme Een Ancient Region, East Mulberry Ancient Region, North Underworld Ancient Region, Gilly Ancient Region, Starfiend Ancient Region, and Skyfire Ancient Region were known as the 9 regions along with the Ancient Desolation Region. He had also seen the strength and foundation of the other 8 regions. How could he not know the origin of this Emperor Realm vengeful spirit? Clearly, as Old Toad had said, the Burial Sea Grave was a battlefield in the Decimo Dao War. The ancient Desolation cultivators had once fought against the other 8 regions. This Emperor Realm vengeful spirit of the giant Spirit Blood Clan was probably an emperor of the Blood Demon Ancient Region who had fallen here. Let me ask you, what has happened here all these years? Lin Sun asked. The others also looked over. You don't know. The Emperor Realm vengeful spirit was stunned, and then said coldly, Many years ago, this place has been turned into a forbidden area, forbidding all outsiders to enter. You have violated the rules here. Bang! Lin Sun slapped down, and the body of the Emperor Realm vengeful spirit directly exploded, turning into a gorgeous rain of light that fell into Lin Sun's palm. These were the fragments of the will of the Emperor Realm. After countless years of erosion, they didn't dissipate. Instead, they metamorphosed into an Emperor Realm vengeful spirit with wisdom, which seemed very unusual. Lin Sun probed it with his divine sense. Boom! Suddenly, countless colorful pictures and memories flooded into Lin Sun's mind like a tide. Until a moment later, Lin Sun came to his senses and got what he wanted. Many years ago, the world changed dramatically. After countless years of change, the original power of the world, which had been silent in the lower world, recovered in this lower world, and thus the whole lower world underwent earth-shaking transformation. All of this was like a dry and barren land suddenly glowing with an unprecedented, exuberant vitality. The turbulent spiritual chi swept and spread to every territory and place in the lower world, ushering in a shocking change that was rarely seen since ancient times. The ones who felt it the most were naturally the cultivators. In the past decades, the spiritual chi covering the world was at least 100 times richer than before. Especially in some special places, there were even many rare famous mountains and blessed lands in the world. It was as if the barren and declining world had ushered in an unprecedented bright era, and all living beings in the lower world were completely excited about it. In the memory of the Emperor Realm vengeful spirit, with the recovery of spiritual chi, the Burial Sea Grave had also undergone unprecedented changes in the past decade. Many fragments of the will of the great emperors who died in the battle had all evolved after devouring a lot of spiritual chi. They began to awaken their consciousness and began to hunt and devour the power of their own kind, so that their own strength continued to skyrocket. Up to now, there were hundreds of vengeful spirits who had awakened their consciousness in the Burial Sea Grave and possessed wisdom and the power of the Emperor Realm. This was definitely a shocking number. It could also be seen how many Emperor Realm cultivators had died in the Decimo Dao battle. Knowing this, Lin Sun was also shocked. Decades ago, the recovery of spiritual chi. The Emperor Realm vengeful spirits were also born. It caused an ancient battlefield like the Dao Burial Sea Burial Mound to become completely different from before. What made Lin Sun nervous was that almost 90% of the Emperor Realm vengeful spirits who had awakened their consciousness came from the forces of the 8 regions. During the process of transformation, these vengeful spirits formed groups and killed and devoured the willpower left by the fallen cultivators of the ancient Desolation Realm. As a result, the Burial Sea Grave had become the territory of the forces of the 8 regions. This made Lin Sun involuntarily recall the time when he participated in the 9 regions battlefield. The foreign enemies of the 8 regions were arrogant and looked down on the cultivators of the ancient Desolation Realm as 2-legged sheep. But now, if the Emperor Realm vengeful spirits that originally belonged to the 8 regions charged out together, it would definitely be a devastating disaster for the countless living beings in the lower world. But at the same time, Lin Sun also noticed that according to the memory of the Emperor Realm Vengeful Spirit, there was an ancient Taoist altar in the Burial Sea grave that had been suppressing the place. No vengeful spirit could escape without breaking the shackles of the altar. In other words, the Burial Path Sea tomb was like a natural cage that had trapped the vengeful spirits for the past few decades. Once that cage-like Tao altar was taken down, it would be no different from opening the gates of hell. P.S. Kids, don't forget to vote for the Best Author of the Year for free. Chapter 2438. That Taoist altar. Lin Sun frowned and searched through the Emperor Vengeful Spirit's memories. Instantly, a grand, enormous, and vast Taoist altar appeared in his mind. It covered an area of tens of thousands of meters and had the layout of the 9 palaces. The Taoist altar was made of mysterious divine materials, and it was stained with bright red blood. Even after countless years, the blood hadn't faded and it was still dazzling. Black mist surged and many terrifying Emperor Vengeful Spirits were attacking the Taoist altar from all directions. There was a flame giant with broken armor, a skeleton of a Kuanping that was as large as a floating continent, a corpse that had a sword at its waist and was shrouded in demonic aura, and the scene was horrifying. There were 2 figures on the Taoist altar. One was a figure sitting cross-legged on a black skeleton. He wore a broken blood-red robe and held a broken white bone prayer bead in his hand. He was like a Buddha, but he seemed extremely strange and eerie. A blooming black lotus was branded on his smooth head. It seemed as if it was alive and it emitted a shocking demonic luster. His eyes were closed and he stood still. The blood-red robe was broken, as if he had passed away, but he gave off a terrifying aura like that of the ruler of hell. The other was a faintly discernible beautiful figure that emitted a terrifying aura that made everything in the world tremble. She was obviously a woman. Her figure was graceful and faintly discernible. Her entire body was enveloped by a vast gray mist that surged with an obscure and invisible power that made it impossible to see her appearance. She was like a ruler that stood between heaven and earth. She had an aura that could destroy everything and look down on the world. It was too terrifying and strange. It's them. At this moment, Lin Sun's body trembled as he recognized them. They were the blind monk and mistress that he had met before. Unfortunately, what Lin Sun saw was only the memory of the Emperor Vengeful Spirit. It was only for a short moment and he couldn't see anything else. But this discovery allowed Lin Sun to deduce many things. First, the Emperor Vengeful Spirits were besieging the Taoist altar in order to escape from the Burial Sea Mound. Second, the blind monk and mistress should be the will and spirits left behind by the ancient desolation. They were guarding the Taoist altar to prevent those terrifying fellows from the 8 regions from escaping. Third, the Burial Sea Mound was in a precarious situation. Thinking of this, Lin Sun took action without hesitation. He had already obtained many things from the Emperor Vengeful Spirit's memories. He naturally knew how serious the consequences would be if the altar was destroyed. On the way, Lin Sun quickly told Ah Hu and others the news he got. Soon, they all changed their expressions and realized the seriousness of the problem. "Young master, do you still remember how I brought you to hide in the Tao burial mound to avoid being hunted down all those years ago?" said Ah Hu suddenly. "I remember." How could Lin Sun forget that it was the Misty Girl who defeated the enemies back then? Those seniors were all great figures from the primeval times, and they possessed extraordinary might. During the 10 great Tao battles, they'd annihilated countless enemies from the 8 regions. Ah Hu said, "Young master, if you can't let the souls and wills left behind by those seniors dissipate," Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and said, "I will try my best." He immediately placed Ah Hu, the old toad, and Ah Lu into the Tower of Endless before he charged towards the depths of the Tao burial mound by himself. There were many horrible Emperor Vengeful Spirits in this strange sea, and Ah Hu and others couldn't help much. The most direct way was for him to attack with all his might. The mist was heavy and silent. In the vast sea, Lin Sun's figure was like a swift flowing light, his speed shocking the world. Kill! Kill! Stop all enemies from entering! Not long after, a harsh shout suddenly rang out. In the distant area, countless vengeful spirits had gathered to form an army, blocking the area. They were everywhere, densely packed. As soon as Lin Sun's figure appeared, the army of vengeful spirits seemed to have received an order to attack and charge towards Lin Sun. Their figures were shrouded in gray, evil spirits, carrying with them a murderous intent. At this moment, all of them moved out at once. It was as if they covered the sky and the earth. Their power alone could be described as monstrous. Lin Sun didn't even look at them. He just waved his sleeve. Countless Taishan sword chi whizzed out. 1 turned into 2, 2 turned into 4. It kept changing and increasing. Not long after, it turned into a vast sea of sword chi that surged forward. Boom! Hundreds of thousands of vengeful spirits suddenly burst into pieces in the sea of sword chi like paper. They didn't even have the chance to resist or struggle, let alone react. They were directly crushed. However, the army of vengeful spirits seemed to be endless. They didn't know what fear was at all. As soon as a batch was killed, another batch rushed over. Lin Sun didn't intend to waste time. He moved like a gale, tore the void, and rushed into the army of vengeful spirits. In just a few breaths, a straight crack was created in the army of vengeful spirits that covered the sea like a tide, and it continued to spread and extend on both sides of the crack. There were constantly exploding vengeful spirits. No matter how powerful they were, as long as they stood in front of Lin Sun, they were all cut through by Lin Sun. Like a hot knife through butter. Hurry up! There are foreign enemies coming. Seeing that Lin Sun was about to rush out of the line of defense, a cold shout rang out. Before the voice died away, a shadow that covered the sky was cast down, and the terrible, cold, and violent killing intent was like a storm, suddenly locking on Lin Sun. Lin Sun looked up. In the sky, the figure of a bone bird appeared, with its wings spread out, covering a range of thousands of meters. The grayish-brown bones were burning with black flames, and the power it exuded was at least comparable to the 3rd level of the Emperor realm. Boom! The bone bird flapped its wings, and endless black flames with the smell of death swept down, melting the void, boiling and evaporating the sea, and rolling mist. Die! Lin Sun spat out a word. The terrible sound wave turned into a storm of the Great Way, sweeping up to the sky. The black flames were crushed and extinguished by the storm before they came close. Then, a mournful wail rang out, and the bone bird, which exuded the power of the Emperor realm, was directly torn apart by the sound wave and turned into powder all over the sky. This scene alarmed the attention of many terrifying thoughts in the distant sea. How could there be such a person in this world? It seems it's a young great emperor. Stop him. Even if we can't kill him, we must not allow him to get close to the Taoist altar. Hurry up! As soon as these thoughts finished communicating, horrible auras suddenly gushed out from the black mist in the distance, rushing into the sky and stirring up the wind and clouds. This vast sea was completely roaring and rolling up huge waves. Boom! Boom! Amidst the deafening rumbles, numerous vengeful spirits that emanated the aura of the Emperor realm tore through the void and came over. All of them were in tatters while some only had shattered corpses left. They had all sorts of strange appearances, but all of them possessed the aura of the Emperor realm and were covered in a strange and terrifying aura of death. In the distance, Lin Sun frowned. There was no doubt that he was close to the area where the Taoist altar was located, which caused such a big movement. At this time, the number of resentful spirits of the Emperor realm had reached dozens. Kill! The earth-shattering roar resounded, and the void was in disorder. Dozens of Emperor realm vengeful spirits of different shapes surrounded Lin Sun and attacked him. Their momentum was terrible and their killing intent was monstrous. They are really reckless. Lin Sun took a deep breath, and a cold light flashed in his black eyes. Buzz! The sword cauldron suddenly emerged, splashing hundreds of millions of divine lights. In an instant it illuminated the sea surrounded by black mist, dazzling. Lin Sun's body was roaring and his body was glowing. His momentum suddenly rose to the peak state, and his tall figure seemed to have the momentum to devour the world and deter the world. His figure flashed, and the 5 Taoist bodies rushed out, each holding an emperor weapon, and stood side by side with Lin Sun. Each of them exuded the supreme power that covered the sky. It was like a group of gods coming to the world. Kill! Without hesitation, Lin Sun rushed out first, and the sword cauldron roared and rushed to the sky. The one rushing to the front was a corpse of more than 30 meters high. Its flesh and blood had long decayed, and it was holding a white-boned spear. Its aura was cold and violent, which was extremely frightening. However, when the sword cauldron rushed up, with a bang, the corpse of more than 30 meters was directly crushed and turned into a violent black torrent of evil spirit. It couldn't withstand a single blow. As the Tao sword flew out of the sword cauldron, it slashed through the void. A ray of sword light that was tens of thousands of feet long dragged along a blazing light. It tore the sky apart and split the void in half. The monstrous power of the sword made countless Emperor Realm resentful spirits pale with fright. Boom! As the sword light descended, 3 Emperor-level vengeful spirits were instantly crushed. Their bodies were annihilated by the boundless sword light and dissipated into thin air. A huge ravine was split open on the surface of the sea and extended far into the distance. One sword divided the sea. The power of the sword here was earth-shattering. But for those resentful spirits of the Emperor Realm, it didn't seem to deter them. In other words, in order to stop Lin Sun, they had already rushed to Lin Sun without hesitation, regardless of life and death. Up! Duo! Confrontation! Cut! Go! At this time, the 5 Taoist bodies moved together, each more powerful than the other. Each of them exerted their supreme talent and drove the Emperor weapon to offset and dissolve the attacks of those resentful spirits of the Emperor Realm. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lin Sun moved straight forward, swift and fierce. Along the way, some resentful spirits of the Emperor Realm rushed out, trying to stop Lin Sun, but they were all easily killed by Lin Sun with the sword cauldron. There was almost no resistance. In fact, these resentful spirits of the Emperor Realm, after all, were transformed from the will and soul of the Emperor Realm. Although they had wisdom, they couldn't be compared with the real emperors of the same realm. Moreover, their combat power was at most comparable to the 7th level of the Emperor Realm. For Lin Sun, they were no deterrent at all. Under the full attack of Lin Sun, he killed them like slaughtering chickens and dogs. See. The sky was overturned, and the black fog was heavy. The enemies came one after another. Lin Sun was invincible all the way. He left the dust behind. Chapter 2439. Burial of Path Sea Grave. It was a name that sounded extremely strange and terrifying. It was like entering the hell, full of black fog and countless ghosts. The scene was enough to make all the practitioners in the world desperate. It was extremely vast here. The deeper he went, the thicker the black fog was. Lin Sun rushed all the way forward and finally got rid of those vengeful spirits, and came to the central area of the Burial of Path Sea Grave. There was only one Taoist altar with a scope of 10,000 meters, floating above the sea in the shape of 9 palaces, ancient and stained with blood. When Lin Sun arrived, he saw that the altar was surrounded by vengeful spirits with horrible aura in all directions. There was a Kuan Ping whose skeleton was as large as a floating continent. There was a majestic figure clad in armor and covered in rolling black fog. There was an old man with a broken corpse who controlled black lightning. There was a huge bird with white bone wings and a monstrous demonic aura. Each of them was as strong as the 8th level of the Emperor Realm, and some of them were even comparable to the Emperor Ancestor. Boom! They manipulated the terrible power of destruction and attacked the altar with all their strength. The sound of Tao rumbled like thunder in the ninth heaven. Profound and unfathomable restrictions appeared in the surroundings of the Tao platform, and they ceaselessly resisted and dealt with the attacks that came from all directions. Obviously, it couldn't hold on for too long. Under such violent bombardment, the whole altar shook violently, and there were many cracks on its surface. Above the altar, the black fog was surging. The figures of the blind monk and the misty girl could be vaguely seen, like weeds about to be drowned by the stormy waves. The situation was precarious. Seeing this, Lin Sun took a deep breath, suddenly took out the insignificant bow and the blue sky arrow, and pulled the blood-red bowstring. Bang! Along with the sound of wind and thunder, the blue sky arrow shot out explosively. It was like a ray of flowing light that pierced through the barrier of time. Its speed was swift, and its power was ferocious. Both of them had reached a shocking level. In the distance, an emperor vengeful spirit in a blood-stained robe with a broken arm seemed to be aware of the danger. He suddenly turned around and waved the bloody spear in his hand. At the same time, the blue sky arrow came. Boom! The blood-colored spear exploded into a dazzling rain of light. An 8th-level Emperor Realm vengeful spirit that had lost an arm was instantly pulverized by the terrifying light of the arrow. This scene instantly caused a commotion in the surroundings, and exclamations of shock resounded from all directions. Damn it! Enemies are coming! A young peak great emperor? Since when did such a powerful figure appear in the ancient Desolation Realm? All of you go deal with this person first. We'll be able to sink this Tao platform in less than 8 minutes. At that time, it'll be time for us to escape. All right. During the conversation, Lin Sun had already pulled the insignificance bow to the fullest and shot the moly arrow, the auspicious light arrow and the fragmented feather arrow in one go as fast as lightning. Bang! 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 The rumbling of wind and thunder resounded through the clouds and shook the entire area. It was deafening. In the distance, before the enemies could even make a move, the Emperor Realm vengeful spirits exploded one after another, killed on the spot. The ferocious and domineering scene almost made those intelligent enemies unable to believe it. As far as they were concerned, it was impossible for a peak great emperor at the 4th level of the Emperor Realm to be so powerful. But the fact was like a stick that caught them off guard. Immediately, as if they were enraged or aware of the serious threat, they didn't dare to hesitate any longer and separated a group of people to attack Lin Sun. At the same time, the other Emperor Realm vengeful spirits seemed to be stimulated and bombarded the ancient Tao platform crazily. Lin Sun's pupils narrowed slightly. His tall figure seemed to turn into a big abyss that could swallow the sky and the earth, roaring and boiling. His spirit and cultivation were also released unprecedentedly at this moment. At this time, there was no need to hold back at all. He had to kill. Carve out a bright and clear universe. Rise. The abyssal sword cauldron appeared, and the divine light covered the sky and the earth, blocking and resolving the attacks from all directions one by one. Unshakable. Indestructible. Accompanied by the sword's sound that resounded through the heavens and the earth, Lin Sun used his Taoist sword and rushed out violently. The power of the sword covered the sky. Rumble! A great battle broke out. The sky fell, the earth cracked, the sea evaporated, the divine light flowed like a tide, and the thunder and lightning tore through the void. More than 10 Emperor Realm vengeful spirits attacked together and surrounded Lin Sun. Each of them displayed the combat power of an 8th-level Emperor Realm cultivator. However, in Lin Sun's eyes, they weren't a threat at all. As the Taoist sword whistled past bang, 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 one by one, the Emperor Realm vengeful spirits were killed on the spot. The unparalleled sword chi wreaked havoc and destroyed everything. After these Emperor Realm vengeful spirits were killed, they turned into turbulent evil chi and dissipated. After all, no matter how powerful they were not real emperors. Otherwise, they might have been able to put some pressure on Lin Sun. Rumble! It wasn't long before all the Emperor Realm vengeful spirits that had besieged Qin she had been utterly defeated and annihilated. Damn it, he's just a young great emperor, how can he be so powerful? In the distance, the Emperor Realm vengeful spirits that were attacking the Taoist altar were enraged and in disbelief. Seeing that Lin Sun was about to reach them, an old man with a broken body suddenly gave up on attacking the Taoist altar and charged towards Lin Sun. He controlled the black lightning and his aura was cold and strange. His body was covered with a decaying aura of death. His aura was so strong that it was almost comparable to a 9th-level Emperor Realm cultivator. Die. The old man's voice was as cold as a blade. Black thunder and lightning fell from the sky and shrouded Lin Sun like death thunder. The void collapsed and exploded. The black lightning was like a chain that whipped the world. It was unimaginably terrifying. At this moment, Lin Sun was in awe. The aura of the old man was comparable to that of Fourth Brother. Of course, Fourth Brother was only using the strength of a 4th-level Emperor Realm cultivator. Lin Sun roared and stepped forward, slashing out with his Taoist sword. Boom! The sky seemed to be torn apart. Endless sword chi dazzled the eyes. It was a vast expanse of whiteness that dyed the world shrouded in black mist with blazing light. When the sword light dissipated, the old man in the distance was stunned. He murmured in a trance, What kind of sword Tao is this? His voice was getting lower and lower. On the other hand, the old man's figure silently turned into ashes that drifted down to the heavens and earth. One slash killed a vengeful spirit that was comparable to a 9th-level Emperor Realm cultivator. However, for Lin Sun, the old man and the Emperor ancestor were worlds apart. After all, he was a vengeful spirit that had fallen countless years ago. Even if his aura and power were terrifying, he did not have the will and spirit. He lacked the power of the Emperor ancestor. Over the years, Lin Sun had fought with countless Emperor ancestor realm cultivators. Naturally, he knew how powerful the real Emperor ancestor realm cultivators were. Moreover, if the old man really had the power of the Emperor ancestor realm, he would not have been killed by one slash. In the distance, there were only 9 vengeful spirits that were attacking the Taoist altar. At this moment, they all felt a chill and fear. It was too terrifying. It was inconceivable that a great emperor at the 4th level of the Emperor realm could kill their companions who were on par with them with one slash. The Taoist altar was on the verge of collapse, and the cracks on its surface were shocking. It was on the verge of collapse. But at this moment, these vengeful spirits did not dare to think about it because Lin Sun had already arrived. Go! A figure that was covered in mist and holding a sword shouted. He turned around and fled unwillingly. Seeing this, the other vengeful spirits immediately followed. In the blink of an eye they disappeared. "Young man, you will die here." A threatening voice full of resentment floated between heaven and earth, echoing for a long time. Lin Sun heaved a sigh of relief. He did not chase after them, nor did he care about the threat. Previously, he was also worried that if these ghosts attacked the Taoist altar with all their strength, even if he could kill them one by one, he would not be able to protect the Taoist altar. Fortunately, none of this happened. The Taoist altar was already riddled with holes and cracks. Like glass that was about to shatter, it could no longer withstand serious damage. In the center of the Taoist altar, a black skeleton floated in the air. The blind monk was dressed in a bloody robe with a black lotus pattern on his head and empty eye socket. He looked as if he had passed away in a sitting posture. Beside him, the misty lady sat on one side. Her graceful figure also revealed an aura of exhaustion and decay. "Xingjia, that kid came to help us. The ancient wilderness Taoist altar is not destroyed. If you don't believe me, take a look." The voice of the woman shrouded in mist was intermittent, sounding incomparably weak. But no matter what she said, the blind monk next to her did not move. Lin Sun was shocked. "Xingjia Buddha?" Suddenly, He recalled the Buddha's pagoda he'd seen in the Buddha Earth in the region of extinction and the Buddhist Lord Xingjia who'd left it behind. He still remembered that Xingjia Buddha, whom he had never met, had left behind a sentence in the pagoda, "When my Tao is proven, I will know the suffering of all living beings." Xingjia Buddha regarded him as one of us and called him fellow Taoist. To this day, Lin Sun could not forget the heart of killing pagoda, given by Xingjia Buddha. "Leave my heart of killing pagoda and break the way of life and death with you." Thinking of this, Lin Sun looked at the blind monk who was full of strange aura. His eyes completely changed. Could it be that he was Xingjia Buddha? But immediately Lin Sun's heart sank, because he'd already noticed that the aura of the blind monk had vanished completely, and only an icy cold and deathly still body remained. An indescribable feeling of loss welled up in Lin Sun's heart. How could he not know that the blind monk died to defend the Taoist altar? "My young friend, come and talk." The woman shrouded in mist spoke. Her voice was getting weaker and weaker. Obviously, she could not hold on for much longer. Lin Sun climbed up the Taoist altar without hesitation. It was also at this moment that he finally saw the appearance of the woman who was completely covered in mist, and he instantly felt as if he'd been struck by lightning, and he was stunned on the spot. How could it be her? P.S. It's the weekend. I heard that many children are on winter vacation. Don't forget to vote for the best author. Chapter 2440. Many years ago, in the domain of the Absolute Summit, Lin Sun once saw a unique woman after entering the forbidden blood abyss. Between heaven and earth there was a blood-red mist, and a small hill made of skeletons stood in the middle of it. Blood and mist flowed out from the densely packed skeletons, and on the top of the hill a graceful figure sat there, wearing a blood-stained dress. She seemed to be combing her long hair in front of the river. However, what was even more frightening was that there was nothing above her neck. There was no head. When he was about to leave, Lin heard a faint sigh, full of endless loneliness. "Who will remember me, Wu Yang, when you are all gone?" It was also at that time that Lin Sun heard that there was a talented Emperor Wu Yang at the beginning of the ancient times. She fought in the 9 heavens and fought in the 9 nether. She dominated for a period of time alone, and her peers were all overshadowed. A woman who could surpass her peers and dominate for a period of time was like a legend, enough to shock anyone. That was the first time Lin Sun heard of Emperor Wu Yang. Later, Lin Sun entered the Styx River, and entered a pure land full of thunder-sound purple bamboo. Over there, Lin Sun saw the graceful figure again. At that time, her dress was as clean as snow, without any blood stains. Although her figure was illusory and blurry, her hair was still flowing like a waterfall, and her head was still there. In the purple bamboo forest, she and Lin Sun talked about many things. She regarded Lin Sun as her Taoist friend. There was the gate to heaven, the struggle of the world, and the road to the absolute summit. Her voice was clear and cold. Later, she told Lin Sun that she had cultivated for 3,000 years, traveled the world alone, and killed countless enemies. Among her peers, she was unparalleled. She learned thousands of Taoist skills and methods in her life. But later, she only left one sword style, called No Return. This was the supreme inheritance of Sword Tao that she had condensed in her life, and it had amazed the world. At that time, she imparted it to Lin Sun without reservation. At that time, Lin Sun asked, "Why did you appear as a headless body?" Wu Yang replied, "Back then, when he was fighting against the other 8 regions, it was snatched away by someone. Such humiliation, he would definitely avenge it in the future." Since then, everything about Battle Emperor Wu Yang had been buried deep in Lin Sun's heart like a mystery. Now, he was already a peak 4th level Great Emperor. However, when he thought of Battle Emperor Wu Yang and how he never returned, he was still amazed. A great empress could suppress an entire era. How dazzling was that? At this time, when he stood on the platform and saw the woman shrouded in mist, Lin Sun was stunned. Because she was Battle Emperor Wu Yang. Although its appearance was still vague and illusory, how could Lin Sun forget its ethereal and cold unique temperament? How could this be? Lin Sun's heart was in turmoil. After all, when he first crossed the Soul Oblivion Ocean and entered the Burial Sea Burial Mound, he had seen him. There was also the blind monk beside Battle Emperor Wu Yang. Just like the Buddhist Lord Xingjia whom he had met in the region of death, he had also met the blind monk when he was young. However, Lin Sun had never thought that they would be acquaintances of his. This sudden truth caught Lin Sun off guard. "Fellow Taoist, why are you here?" Lin Sun couldn't help but ask. The beautiful figure seemed surprised as well. She asked, "What do you mean, my young friend?" Lin Sun took a deep breath and suppressed the doubts in his heart. He told her everything he had seen in the region of death. After listening to him, the woman came to a realization. She said, "This is really interesting. Everything in the world is just like a drink and a peck. Everything is predetermined. There must be a reason for everything." After listening to the woman's explanation, Lin Sun finally understood everything. In ancient times, the Dark World experienced its first oblivion calamity. Taishien's Sword Emperor led a group of powerful figures from the ancient Desolate War League there. After experiencing danger, they finally took away a portion of the world source that originally belonged to the Dark World. This portion of the world source was the region of death that appeared in the ancient Desolation Realm. However, when Taishien's Sword Emperor and his group returned to the ancient Desolation Realm with this portion of the world source, they were intercepted by cultivators from the 8 realms. A bloody battle broke out between the two sides. In this conflict, Battle Emperor Wu Yang was besieged by a group of terrifying existences. Although he eventually killed all of his enemies, his head was taken away by a sneak attack. Battle Emperor Wu Yang regarded this as the greatest humiliation of his life. The scenes that Lin Sun saw in the region of death were the remnants of that bloody battle. As for what was left in the thunder-purple bamboo forest, it was only a wisp of Battle Emperor Wu Yang's willpower. Until later, Battle Emperor Wu Yang killed his way into the Outland Realm alone. He traveled for 90,000 miles and killed 16 enemies, all of whom were great emperors of ancient times and ancestors of emperors. After this battle, Battle Emperor Wu Yang, Taishien's Sword Emperor, and the others headed to the other side of the universe together. When the nameless Supreme Emperor swept through the ancient path of the universe with the forbidden power of order, Battle Emperor Wu Yang, Buddhist Lord Xingjia, and other cultivators also returned from the other side of the universe and participated in the Decimo Dao battle. However, the battlefield was in the Burial Sea Mound. The result of the battle was that the enemies of the 8 realms were all slaughtered here. However, when the Great Wall of the ancient Desolation Realm's Imperial Pass was attacked, the forbidden power of order spread throughout the world. Battle Emperor Wu Yang, Buddhist Lord Xingjia, and the others could only leave behind a wisp of their willpower to suppress this place and leave in a hurry. Otherwise, they would never have the chance to return to the other side of the universe. After understanding this, Lin Sun realized that the blind monk and misty girl before him were also willpower to suppress the Burial Sea Mound. As for their original bodies, they had clearly returned to the other side of the universe. Thinking of this, Lin Sun felt relaxed. It was a great fortune that he didn't die. Battle Emperor Wu Yang asked, "Young friend, do you know why we didn't go to the Great Wall of the Imperial Pass and chose to fight here?" Her aura grew weaker and her voice became ethereal, but she didn't seem to notice. Lin Sun shook his head. "This world is the core of the origin of all Daos and has always been coveted by the other 8 realms. Since the beginning of the Archean era, the ancient Desolation Realm and the other 8 realms have fought countless bloody wars for this core origin. The skeletons buried in the Great Wall of the Imperial Pass are the best proof. According to Battle Emperor Wu Yang, even if the ancient Desolation Realm lost to the nameless Venerable Emperor in the 10-directional Dao War, it still had a chance to rise again. But if the core of the origin of all Daos in the ancient Desolation realm was taken away, it was destined to fall into decline and become a true abandoned land of the great Daos. As the ancient Desolation realm was destroyed in the 10-directional Dao War, the core of the origin of all Daos was left in this lower realm. In other words, this lower realm was formed from the core power of the origin of all Daos. The survivors of the Archean 10,000 clans in the Soul Oblivion Sea were actually descendants of the clans that lived near the origin of all Dao. Battle Emperor Wu Yang, Buddhist Lord Xingjia, and other powerful figures were originally from the ancient Desolation realm. They naturally wouldn't allow the origin of all Daos in the ancient Desolation realm to be taken away. After understanding all this, Lin Sun finally understood. The ultimate, the bloodthirsty battlefield, the burial sea mound, they were all in the lower realm. This was enough to prove how extraordinary the lower realm was. Young friend, have you noticed that the spiritual chi of the great Daos in the lower realm is constantly recovering? Battle Emperor Wu Yang asked. Lin Sun nodded and then froze. Could this be the core power of the origin of all Daos awakening? That's right. Battle Emperor Wu Yang said, a few decades ago, the spiritual chi recovered and the world changed. The origin of all Daos that had been silent for countless years finally awakened. This also affected the changes in the burial sea mound. The vengeful spirits of the 8 realms that were suppressed here also transformed during the recovery of the spiritual chi. Xingjia and I are only the willpower left behind in the past. Countless years have passed, and the power we possess has already weakened by more than half. If not, we wouldn't be trapped here. At this point, Battle Emperor Wu Yang looked at Lin Sun and said, Fortunately, young friend, you're here. Otherwise, if those damned things destroyed this altar and escaped the burial sea mound, the origin of all Daos would be invaded and occupied by them. Lin Sun's emotions fluctuated as he said, Don't worry, since I'm here, I will naturally destroy all the enemies in the burial sea mound. His words were resolute and decisive. Battle Emperor Wu Yang smiled and suddenly said, The lower realm is ushering in an unprecedented change. When the core power of the origin of all Daos completely awakens, it can even turn this realm into a true blessed land of the great Tao, comparable to the Middle Earth state of the primordial world. Lin Sun's heart shook and he gasped. The primordial world was regarded as the #1 realm in the universe, and among the 49 states of the primordial world, the Middle Earth state was the most powerful. It was an extremely prosperous, and fertile territory. The 6 major Dao courts, the 10 war clans, and many far ancient emperor clans resided there. It was a terrifying place. One Middle Earth state was able to support so many ancient orthodoxies and forces. One could imagine how extraordinary the Middle Earth state was. In reality, Lin Sun had gone there before and seen how sacred the Middle Earth state was. He also saw how terrifying the Black-Yellow Dao Court's foundation was. If the current lower realm could also transform into such a blessed land of the great Tao in the future, the impact it would bring would be immeasurable. At the very least, the billions of living beings living in the lower realm would have the opportunity to change their fates and realize continuous transformation. Think about it. In the past, a reincarnation development realm cultivator could be called an overlord who could summon the wind and rain. A longevity tribulation realm monarch could intimidate an area and no one dared to provoke them. What about in the future? There would probably be countless cultivators like them. Even the Sage realm and the Boundary Emperor realm were destined to be a common occurrence. As for the Emperor realm, they would also appear continuously. When that time came, the entire situation in the lower realm was destined to be completely different from before. The more Lin Sun thought about it, the more shocked he was. No wonder Battle Emperor Wu Yang, Buddhist Lord Xingjia, and the others would risk everything to protect the core power of the origin of all Daos. The opportunities contained within were truly too heaven-defying. Chapter 2441. As Lin Sun's heart was pounding, Battle Emperor Wu Yang's figure quietly dissipated into a sparkling rain of light. Fellow Taoist. Lin Sun's pupils constricted. I can rest assured that you are here. If fate allows, we will meet again in the starry sky. A wisp of an ethereal voice reverberated between heaven and earth. When he looked at Buddhist Lord Xing Jia's figure again, he also silently turned into nothingness. Lin Sun cupped his fists and bowed. Among the sages he knew, the Taishan Sword Emperor, Battle Emperor Wu Yang, and the Xingjia Buddhist Lord were all magnanimous and open-minded. They had the world in their hearts and were worthy of respect. Next, Lin Sun checked the Taoist altar again, only to find that it was so badly damaged that it was impossible to repair it. It wouldn't take long for the altar to completely collapse without the enemy's siege. Before this altar is destroyed, I must wipe out all the wraiths in the burial sea grave. Lin Sun made a decision. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. 5 Taoist bodies flew over from afar. Lin Sun immediately understood that the 5 Taoist bodies had killed a total of 37 wraiths of the Emperor realm. Such accomplishments could already be said to be brilliant. But for Lin Sun, who had killed countless great emperors, it was nothing. Ahu, you guys stay here. I'll go kill the enemies. Lin Sun released Ahu and the others and told them the information he got from Battle Emperor Wu Yang. Then, he decided to take action immediately. Ahu, Old Toad, and Alu also realized that time was running out and nodded. Lin Sun was still worried, so he left the 5 Tao forms behind to guard the Taoist altar, while he himself teleported away. From that day onwards, countless vengeful spirits suffered calamity in the Tao burial sea tomb. But all of them that Lin Sun encountered were completely annihilated without mercy. Even if they hid under the sea, Lin Sun still found and killed them one by one. 3 days later, Lin Sun stood in a black mist and looked around while refining the divine medicine to replenish his strength. It had been 3 days and he had killed at least 100,000 wraiths along the way. But most of them were cannon fodder, not worth mentioning, and could be destroyed with a flick of a finger. As for the vengeful spirits with the aura of the Emperor realm, they seemed to have evaporated from the world. Lin Sun only met 2 of them, and their strength was very weak. Where are those intelligent fellows hiding? Lin Sun frowned. He'd already realized that he hadn't seen a single one of those terrifying figures that had besieged the Tao platform earlier. Obviously, they'd gone into hiding a long time ago. If he didn't kill them one by one, once the Tao altar was destroyed, these damned things would definitely escape at the first moment. But what Lin Sun didn't expect was that the burial sea burial mound was so vast that it could be compared to a world. Moreover, it was covered in thick black fog. Up until now, Lin Sun hadn't been able to find any trace of those vengeful spirits. No matter what, we must drag them out. When his physical strength recovered, Lin Sun took a deep breath and continued to sweep. At the same time, in the depths of the Tao burial sea tomb, a scarlet mountain sank into the sea. This mountain was extremely strange, and it emanated an obscure aura that caused its surroundings to be isolated from the outside world. Even if one used their divine sense to investigate, it would be utterly impossible to notice. A group of emperor-level vengeful spirits gathered near the scarlet divine mountain. Let's wait a little longer. That Tao platform has long been destroyed by us to the point of collapse. It won't be long before we can escape from here. A figure shrouded in fog with a sword at his waist spoke in a low voice. As long as we escape, with our strength, we can achieve further transformation in this world's spiritual chi recovery. At that time, as he spoke, his voice was filled with excitement. The core of the Tao's origin will definitely respect us. The surrounding people were restless. The emperor-level vengeful spirits were also excited. But if that young great Emperor Juing doesn't die, even if we escape in the future, we won't be able to eat and sleep in peace. A hoarse sigh resounded. As if a bucket of cold water had been poured over them, the other emperor-level vengeful spirits fell into silence. The atmosphere also became oppressive. The young great Emperor Juing was simply too powerful. It made them feel cold and terrified. They couldn't imagine how such a person could exist in this world. Don't worry. When we get out of here, we'll contact the forces of our respective territories. At that time, the 8 territories coalition army will come together and occupy this lower world. The figure with a sword at his waist said. As for that young great emperor, how can he stop the 8 territories coalition army? The emperor-level vengeful spirits all relaxed a lot when they heard this. At this moment, an indifferent voice suddenly sounded. The 8 territories coalition army? In your dreams. This sentence was like a bolt from the blue, shocking the emperor-level vengeful spirits. That kid actually came to them? How did he do it? Boom. A brilliant and immeasurable sword chi suddenly cut down from the sea, separating the sea water and evaporating the rolling mist. The scarlet-red divine mountain that had sunk into the sea was slashed apart by this sword strike, and it rumbled as it collapsed and emanated surging and violent turbulent flows of energy. The emperor-level vengeful spirits hiding nearby were all frightened and chose to escape at the first moment as if they had gone mad. No one was willing to fight with Lin Sun again. They all knew that this was no different from courting death. They just wanted to escape. As long as they could avoid this disaster and wait for the altar to be completely destroyed, they would have a chance to escape. At this chaotic moment, Lin Sun's indifferent voice sounded slowly, "Little Five, it's your turn." Immediately afterward, a terrible prohibition power, as if covering the sky and the sun, completely enveloped this sea area. Countless bright runes and Taoist patterns flickered, emitting a terrible aura that was enough to make the ancestors of emperors tremble. Dao Fall Formation. Although the emperor-level vengeful spirits fled in different directions, this sea area was shrouded and blocked. When they reacted, they had already been trapped in the formation. Oh no! Damn it, that kid is too despicable. He has already set up a prohibition formation. Kill, kill. A burst of exasperated roars sounded. The emperor-level vengeful spirits seemed to have gone mad, trying their best to break the formation. Outside the formation, Xiaowu smiled in disdain and snapped his fingers. Boom. The Dao Parish formation was activated to the extreme. For a time, thunder rumbled and lightning flowed, and terrifying killing intent transformed into various phenomena of the Grand Tao that appeared within the Dao Parish formation. Before long, shrill and unwilling screams sounded. In the distance, Lin Sun couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when he saw this scene. 2 days ago, he saw the Scarlet Mountain sunk in the bottom of the sea with the secret method of divination Z's divine eye and found those emperor-level vengeful spirits. However, he didn't take action. Instead, he ordered Little Five to set up the formation in order to kill all these ghosts and prevent any from escaping. Now it was time to draw the net. Rumble! The Tao Perishing Heaven formation rumbled, and the heavens and the earth shook. In just a moment, the 19 emperor-level vengeful spirits trapped in it were all killed. Big brother, no one was spared. In the distance, Little Five smiled brightly. Like old Toad and Alu, he was used to calling Lin Sun Big Brother. Good job. Lin Sun nodded. In the next few days, Lin Sun continued to move. The vast burial sea grave was swept by Lin Sun. On this day, Lin Sun sensed something and looked around. Boom! A layer of invisible energy seemed to have been shattered in the sky above the Dao burial sea tomb, and it emanated intense and ear-piercing rumbling. Immediately after, a clear and bright light shone down from the sky. The black mist that had originally covered this area of the sea instantly turned into rolling smoke and dissipated continuously, like snow melting in water. Lin Sun immediately realized that the Taoist altar here had probably collapsed completely. Fortunately, the vengeful spirits trapped here for countless years had been slaughtered by Lin Sun. Even if there were some left, they were doomed to be useless. It's time to leave. Lin Sun turned around and returned to the place where the ancient Taoist altar was. Putting away the 5 Taoist bodies, Lin Sun told Ah Hu and Old Toad about killing the vengeful spirits, and then he took everyone to the Soul Oblivion Sea. Back to Xiao Empire. On this day, the survivors of the 10,000 ancient races who had lived in the depths of the Soul Oblivion Sea for countless years were surprised to find that the Burial Sea grave, which they regarded as a terrifying forbidden area, had disappeared. It caused a great uproar and countless creatures were excited. The reason was that in the past, the existence of the Burial Sea grave was like a blockade, which the survivors of the 10,000 ancient races didn't dare to cross. But now that the blockade was gone, it wouldn't be difficult for them to expand their forces further away from the Soul Oblivion Sea. The revival of spiritual qi, the great era has come. An unprecedented change will overturn all the previous patterns. This is a chance to reshuffle the cards. The countless creatures in the world have a fair chance. Let's see who can rise in such a prosperous era and lead the trend of the times. The great era, the time when our fate will change. It was unknown how many people of the older generation felt their hearts surging as they made all sorts of deductions. After leaving the Burial Sea grave, Lin Sun didn't take the vast universe arc again. Instead, he teleported directly on the Soul Oblivion Sea. He traveled as fast as lightning. There are so many terrifying auras in the Soul Oblivion Sea. It seems that after the revival of spiritual qi, the Soul Oblivion Sea has also changed. Along the way, Lin Sun's powerful divine sense swept across and saw countless races and creatures living in the sea. Many of them even had the aura of the Quasi-Emperor realm. Lin Sun even noticed the aura of the Emperor realm, but there were very few of them. Along the way, Lin Sun only detected 3 auras of the Emperor realm. They were obviously in closed-door cultivation and were in deep hibernation. They seemed to be waiting for a certain opportunity to come out. Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh. He hadn't returned for many years and the lower realm had indeed changed too much. At least in the past, the Soul Oblivion Sea wouldn't have so many powerful auras. All of this was because the core power of the origin of the 10,000 Daos had awakened, causing the spiritual qi of the entire world to awaken and grow wildly. Tomorrow at 4 p.m., the voting for the best author would end. Don't forget to vote for the free tickets and the free tickets every day. Again, don't spend money on tickets, it's not worth it. Genius 1 second. Remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 2442. One day later. Above the blue ocean, a figure flashed in the void and moved at an incredible speed, just like a flash of flowing light. He was dressed in a moon-white robe with black hair and black eyes. His figure was as tall as a pine tree, his skin as crystal white as jade, and his handsome face was angular as if it was carved by a knife and an axe. From his appearance alone, he looked like a young man. His aura was ordinary, but if there was a martial emperor here, they would feel an oppressive force pressing down on them. It was as if he was facing a ruler that controlled the universe and held the sun and moon in his mouth. This man was Lin Sun. I'm almost there, looking into the distance, he sighed with emotion. After careful calculation, it had been nearly 100 years since he left the mortal world for the first time. During this period, he returned to the mortal world in a hurry when the domain of despair came to an end. 100 years was like a snap of the fingers, but in the lower realms the world had probably changed, and the seas had turned into mulberry fields. Lin Zhong, Mr. Vulture, Young Ku, Zhu Laosan, Ning Meng, Shi Yu. How are they? Memories of the past came to Lin Sun's mind bit by bit, making him a little emotional. He was more timid when he was closer to home. At this moment, he also had an indescribable feeling. 100 years had passed. Were those people still there? His spiritual awareness spread out as if it could see the mystery of the world. But soon, Lin Sun frowned. The faraway sea area bordered the East Sea of Xiao Empire, But now there was an orderly natural moat. Countless violent and gorgeous world orders poured down from the sky like a waterfall. The power of order was surging like tides, and even turned into dancing dragons. Looking from a distance, it was like a barrier connecting the sky and the earth, completely separating the Soul Oblivion Sea from the East Sea of Xiao Empire. Lin Sun's spiritual awareness had detected such an abnormal scene before. The world order turned into a barrier and cut off the Soul Oblivion Sea, which didn't exist in the past at all. Lin Sun slowed down and approached. With his divine awareness, he found that the chasm-like power of order was like layers upon layers of restriction shackles, shrouding the Xiao Empire on the opposite side and isolating all the rules, spiritual energy, and power of the Great Way. Xiao Empire was a world. Then, the order barriers were layers of light shields that enveloped the Xiao Empire and formed a natural defense force of order. Even an ancestral emperor would tremble in fear when facing such a barrier. Not to mention breaking through it, even lightly touching it would probably cause one to suffer a heavy blow. He has indeed changed. Lin Sun's black eyes flickered. He raised his eyes to look at the sky, but he couldn't see any aura of the taboo order energy. Obviously, the energy controlled by Heavenly Emperor Shi could no longer descend upon the mortal world. All of this was most likely related to the recovery of the core power of the myriad Tao origins. Lin Sun looked carefully. If he wanted to return to Xiao Empire, he had to pass through such an orderly natural moat and find a way to cross it. Soon, Lin Sun noticed that thousands of meters away, in the area covered by the torrent of order, a vortex portal emerged. It was hard to notice if one didn't look carefully. Lin Sun directly teleported over and sensed for a while. He couldn't help but hesitate. This vortex portal was indeed a tunnel that could traverse the Zhou Void. It was transformed by the power of order, but Lin Sun didn't know. Where would they be teleported if they entered it? At this moment, suddenly, there was a sound of breaking through the air in the distance. Lin Sun turned his head and saw a group of practitioners flying towards him. There were 3 men and 2 women. Obviously, they were the creatures living in the Soul Oblivion Sea. Although they were in human form, they retained the unique characteristics of the tribe. Among these 5 people, the weakest one was in the Great Sage realm. The handsome green-haired man was in the first level of the Quasi-Emperor realm. Moreover, they were all very young and full of vitality. Obviously, they were not seniors. Someone actually arrived first. Is this fellow Taoist also planning to head to the myriad Tao world? When the 5 people saw Lin Sun, they were also very surprised. One of them, a thin man with golden luster all over his body, asked, "Myriad Tao realm?" Lin Sun was stunned and asked, "Where is that?" The 5 people all showed a suspicious look. A beautiful woman with a cold and arrogant look said coldly, "Friend, over the past decades, have you never cared about the affairs of the world? You don't even know about the myriad Tao realm. It's really ridiculous." Her words were harsh. Seeing Lin Sun frown, a person next to her quickly said, "The myriad Tao realm is where the Xiao Empire used to be. With the recovery of spiritual qi, the territory of the Xiao Empire continued to expand, and many unknown folded spaces and secret realms appeared. Today, the territory of the Xiao Empire is at least 100 times larger than before. Because of the changes caused by the recovery of spiritual qi, the world calls it the myriad Tao realm." Lin Sun finally understood and said, "Thank you very much. I have been in closed-door training these years. I didn't expect that the world has become completely different." The 5 people showed a look of understanding. This was normal. Lin Sun's aura was so ordinary that they didn't feel any threat, which also made them relax. "Friend, the myriad Tao realm is regarded as the world's Taoist fate outbreak. With the recovery of spiritual qi, many rare opportunities will emerge every once in a while. If you are interested, you can go there." The handsome green-haired man said with a reserved look and gave Lin Sun some advice. Of course, you should be careful when you enter the myriad Tao realm at this time. In these years, there have been many extremely powerful and ruthless people in that place. The arrogant woman next to him became impatient and urged, "Senior Brother Wei, he is just a stranger we met by chance. There is no need to talk to him. Let's hurry up." The green-haired man smiled and nodded. He immediately led the others into the vortex portal and disappeared. Watching them leave, Lin Sun couldn't help sighing with emotion. The myriad Tao realm. The place where the Taoist fate outbreak. Its territory expanded 100 times, and many folded spaces and secret realms emerged. Everything in the Xiao Empire had indeed become completely different from before. At least, if one wanted to enter from the Soul Oblivion Sea, he had to pass through an order barrier. Shaking his head, Lin Sun stepped into the vortex portal. Boom! The dazzling divine light burst out, and the next moment, Lin Sun's figure disappeared. He had long been accustomed to the space shift, so he waited quietly. But suddenly, an extremely terrifying force of world order emerged and blotted out the heavens and the earth as it pressed down on Lin Sun. The force was extremely violent and could easily tear apart any cultivator, and even an Emperor Realm expert might not be able to withstand it. Rise. Lin Sun's expression did not change. He directly took out the abyssal sword cauldron, and purple order phoenix flame emerged from the furnace. Lin Sun's expression changed. The power of order phoenix flame was constantly being oppressed, and there was a sign that it could not hold on any longer. Boom! In a flash, the abyssal sword cauldron was directly suppressed. The terrifying force of order pressed down, causing Lin Sun's aura to sink, but he was not hurt. I see. The force of order in this world prevents all forces that go against the natural order from entering. Lin Sun immediately understood and restrained his aura without hesitation. As expected, the oppressive force of order weakened until Lin Sun suppressed his cultivation to the first level of Emperor Realm, and the oppressive force of order finally disappeared. It seems that the current Xiao Empire can only allow cultivators at the first level of Emperor Realm. Otherwise, they will be greatly suppressed and unable to move an inch. While Lin Sun was thinking, his eyes flashed, and he appeared on a void of blue sea. In an instant, he felt that this world was different. The surging pure spiritual energy was like a whistling sea breeze as it swept through the surroundings and spread out in all directions, causing this world to be filled with incomparably surging and dense vitality. At the same time, Lin Sun felt that the great way of heaven and earth was extremely solid. In the past, the power released in a breath could make the world tremble. But now, it could only cause circles of ripples to appear in the nearby space. Lin Sun was not surprised. These years, he had traveled the ancient path of the starry sky, crossed the void, and traveled to countless worlds. Some worlds were as fragile as glass, and a punch from a saint could shake the world, burn mountains, and boil the sea. Some worlds were as solid as divine gold. Even an Emperor Realm expert's all-out attack would only be able to split the mountains and split the seas, and trample through the mountains and rivers. Generally speaking, the more solid the order of a world was, the higher the quality of spiritual qi it could contain, the stronger the great way of heaven, and the higher one's cultivation was, the more benefits one could get from cultivating in it. For example, the Central Earth Taoist state in the Hongmeng world, the order of the world was huge and solid, covered with the incomparable power of the great way of heaven. Obviously, with the changes of the recovery of spiritual qi in Xiao Empire, the power of order of the whole world was constantly growing stronger. Screech! Suddenly, a ferocious bird with silver wings and dazzling light swooped down from the sky. It crossed the void and tried to catch Lin Sun. Lin Sun stretched out his hand and grasped the ferocious bird in his palm. The bird trembled with fear, realizing that it had made a mistake and met a fierce opponent. It's just a silver-scaled falcon, but its cultivation is comparable to that of a life-passing tribulation king. It's getting more and more interesting. Lin Sun was deep in thought. He waved his sleeve and let the silver-scaled falcon go. The latter escaped in a panic and didn't dare to stay any longer. It didn't know that Lin Sun was not merciful, but simply didn't want to deal with such a small fry. It's been 100 years, and now the spiritual qi in the lower world is recovering. I wonder what Xiao Empire has become. Lin Sun looked into the distance and could still vaguely recognize that this sea area originally belonged to the East Sea of the Empire. But compared with the past, it had undergone earth-shaking changes. Let's go back first. Although the world had changed so much that even a silver-scaled falcon could become a life-passing tribulation king, Lin Sun didn't care about it at all. What he cared about most was his old friends and relatives. He didn't waste any time and directly flashed over. For the sake of avoiding causing any disturbances, he restrained his aura and flew silently. Please remember the original domain name of this book. Literature Library Mobile Version Website. Chapter 2443. The sea breeze was whistling, carrying the surging flow of spiritual energy. Compared with Lin Sun's previous life in the lower world, the spiritual qi in the world was hundreds or even thousands of times richer. It was comparable to the macro world on the starry sky ancient path. A thought came to Lin Sun's mind as he walked. The revival of spiritual energy was still going on. Maybe he could make a breakthrough in the lower world? Lin Sun shook his head. Now that he had entered the Myriad Dao realm, which was supposed to be the territory of the Xiao Empire, he had to suppress his cultivation and maintain it at the first level of the Emperor realm. He didn't know how long it would take for him to break through to the 5th level of the Emperor realm. Suddenly, there was a battle in the distance. Lin Sun subconsciously glanced over and saw a beautiful girl in a fiery red dress, with snow-white skin, being besieged. She was in a precarious situation. She was at the 7th level of the longevity tribulation, while her opponents were at the 9th level of the longevity tribulation. No matter which one of them was stronger than her. Lin Sun noticed that the reason why the girl in red could hold on until now was that she had a very powerful ancient saint treasure. It was a flaming red whip, covered with the mysterious power of the divine Tao. Every lash of the whip was like a dancing fire dragon, wantonly and violent. There were many cultivators watching the battle in the nearby sea, but none of them intervened. They looked at the 3 people besieging the girl in red with deep fear. Obviously, the 3 people were not simple. Lin Sun noticed that the 3 men and 2 women he met in the Soul Oblivion Sea were also watching the battle. Then Lin Sun planned to withdraw his consciousness and continue on his way. He was not interested in a battle of this level, so he didn't want to get involved. Although the girl in red was in a precarious situation, she wouldn't be defeated in a short time. However, when he was about to withdraw his consciousness, the girl in red suddenly scolded in a clear voice, "If you want to deal with the Yi family in the East Sea, do it openly. Don't you feel ashamed to use such a dirty trick to force my grandpa to bow his head?" Her pretty face was as cold as frost, and her beautiful eyes were about to spit fire. The Yi family in the East Sea. Lin Sun was stunned. Wasn't that Yi Qi's family? The Heavens Pivot Holy Land is a famous sect in the ancient Desolation realm. How could you bully a junior like me? Shameless. Just you wait, even if I, Yi Lingshuang, die today, I won't let you have your way. That red-robed young lady who called herself Yi Lingshuang was clearly flustered and exasperated. Or to put it more accurately, she had already sensed that the situation she was in was extremely bad. Heavens Pivot Sacred Ground. A cold light flashed in Lin Sun's black eyes when he heard this word. When he entered the ancient Desolation realm for the first time, he became enemies with the successor of the Heavens Pivot Holy Land. In those years, in order to kill him, this great force in the ancient Desolation realm had attacked him many times. Interesting. The members of the Heavens Pivot Divine Grounds have actually descended to the mortal dimension as well. In this way, it would seem that the changes in the mortal dimension have aroused the greed of those sects in the ancient Desolation region. While Lin was thinking, he had already walked over. It's that guy. At the same time, the 3 men and 2 women who had met Lin Sun before all noticed Lin Sun and couldn't help being stunned. Especially when she saw Lin Sun walking straight to the battlefield, the cold and aloof woman couldn't help but sneer. He doesn't even know the name of the myriad Dao realm, and he still plans to play the hero to save the beauty. This kid is really ignorant. Fearless. The handsome green-haired man who was the leader raised his eyebrows and said, "Anyway, we've met by chance. It's better to remind him." As he spoke, he said to Lin Sun, "My friend, this is between the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land and the Yi family of the East Sea. You can't get involved." Lin Sun waved his hand and said, "Thank you for reminding me." But he still continued walking. Seeing this, the aloof woman sneered and said, "Brother Wei, did you see that? He doesn't appreciate your kindness at all." The eyes of the handsome green-haired man also flashed with annoyance, and then he sighed and said, "Anyway, we've already reminded him. Since he insists on getting involved, he should bear the responsibility of his own life and death." He and his companions all carried a kind of indistinct arrogance. After all, the weakest among them had the cultivation of the saint realm. For example, the handsome green-haired man had the cultivation of the quasi-emperor realm. Almost everyone present was nothing in their eyes. At the same time, the cultivators who were watching the battle in the vicinity saw Lin Sun walking towards the battlefield. They couldn't help but be stunned. Who is this guy? Is he going to get involved in the matter of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land? He looks unfamiliar. I've never seen him before. He shouldn't be someone powerful. He's simply courting death. Who doesn't know that since the arrival of the experts of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land 10 years ago, they've been coveting the territory of the East Sea. In these 10 years, all the forces, big and small, have already chosen to submit. Only the Yi family of the East Sea is still holding on. Holding on? I think it won't be long before they're destroyed. There was a lot of discussion in the field. The red-robed girl Yi Lingshuang and the 3 experts of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land also noticed Lin Sun's appearance. Yi Lingshuang was happy at first, but when she saw that Lin Sun was an unfamiliar young man, and he was alone, she couldn't help but show a trace of disappointment. As for the 3 experts of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land, they all frowned, and a cold expression appeared on their faces. "Friend, I advise you to leave now. Don't interfere in this matter, or you'll definitely be met with a calamity." A man with hair like a halberd and a cold gaze like lightning bellowed, not bothering to conceal his threat. He released his aura, causing many in the surroundings to exclaim in shock. The green-haired handsome man and the others laughed and shook their heads. This little bit of power was only enough to bully those ordinary characters. However, Lin Sun seemed to be completely unaware of it. His gaze was fixed on Yi Lingshuang as he asked, "Who is Yi Shaoqi to you?" Surprise flashed in Yi Lingshuang's eyes, and she subconsciously replied, "That's my grandfather's name." Grandfather? Lin Sun was stunned. It was like a storm was raging in his heart. How many years had it been? That little fatty Yi Shaoqi already had a granddaughter? He was completely caught off guard. "You're courting death." Seeing that he was ignored by Lin Sun, the eyes of the man with hair like a halberd flashed with rage. He waved the battle spear in his hand and charged towards Lin Sun. Boom! Violent ripples appeared in the void. The battle spear set off a dazzling shadow, piercing through the air with tyrannical power. This attack caused Yi Lingshuang's expression to change, and she subconsciously said, "Young master, dodge. This kid is finished," the cold and arrogant woman said with pity. The green-haired handsome man let out a long sigh. He had already warned Lin Sun, but this guy still wanted to die. Who could he blame? At this moment, the corners of Lin Sun's mouth slightly curled up. How many years had it been? A small character in the longevity tribulation realm actually dared to attack him. If this news spread to all the heavens in the starry sky, no one would believe it. Lin Sun's figure did not move. The battle spear stopped 3 feet in front of him, unable to move any further. The pupils of the man with hair like a halberd contracted. But no matter how he struggled, the battle spear in his hand was frozen there, not moving an inch. He was shocked and secretly cursed in his heart. At this moment, Lin Sun looked at him and said with an indifferent expression, "The successor of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land still has such a bad memory." Bang! The battle spear exploded, turning into a rain of light that filled the sky. As for the man with hair like a halberd, he silently turned into ashes that drifted into the air, as if he had been incinerated. The entire audience was silent, dumbfounded. Some people even rubbed their eyes, as if they didn't dare to believe this was real. Huh? The pupils of the green-haired handsome man and the others all shrank, their hearts pounding. They were also shocked by this strange scene of death. Even with their cultivation, they actually didn't know how Lin Sun had attacked. The other 2 experts from the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land who were originally attacking Yi Lingshuang trembled at this moment, their expressions changing drastically. Yi Lingshuang was also startled, her beautiful eyes widened. That ordinary-looking fellow, could it be that he was an extremely powerful expert who had concealed his strength? Lass, it's a big taboo to be distracted during a battle. Lin Sun couldn't help but laugh. Who are you? How dare you kill someone from the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land? At the same time, the 2 experts from the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land withdrew their attacks, their expressions ashen as they looked at Lin Sun, revealing a sense of fear in their hearts. That's right, who was this young man? Countless people present also looked at Lin Sun with surprise and doubt. You don't even remember me? Lin Sun's eyes flickered. In the past, when he was in the ancient Desolation Realm, he slaughtered the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land, Lingbao Holy Land, Heavenly Sword Sect, Xuandu Taoism Sect and other orthodoxies, causing them to suffer heavy losses. All of them hated Lin Sun to the bone. But now, these 2 descendants of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land actually didn't recognize him. This enemy, obviously, with the passage of time, the affairs of the world had changed. Perhaps only those old people from the past remembered the grudges and blood feud of the past. Go! At this moment, the 2 people from the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land looked at each other, turned around and fled without any hesitation. Obviously, they had sensed how terrifying Lin Sun was, and didn't dare to stay. Can you still run? Lin Sun snapped out of his trance and flicked his finger. Bang! Bang! Far away on the sea, the 2 experts from the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land died suddenly, their bodies turning into ashes in an instant. Not to mention blood, not even a piece of bone was left. Completely annihilated. A series of gasps sounded in the field, and everyone was shocked. 3 existences at the 9th level of the longevity calamity might not be enough to dominate the world today, but they were still like pillars of strength. Especially, the 3 of them were descendants of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land. But in the blink of an eye, they were annihilated. Who was that strange young man? How dared he not put the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land in his eyes? Yi Lingshuang was also in a trance at this moment, and her eyes stared blankly. It was like a dream. The 3 enemies who put her in a dead end were annihilated just like that? It was even easier than killing ants. Girl, take me to see your grandfather. Lin Sun's voice rang out, waking Yi Lingshuang up. She nodded subconsciously, and then realized that something was wrong. She took a deep breath and summoned up her courage. Senior, can I know your name? Also, why are you looking for my grandfather? Lin Sun smiled. He could tell that this was a vigilant and quick-witted girl. Chapter 2444. Your grandpa and I are good friends. When Lin Sun thought of Yi Qi, he couldn't help but recall the days when he was young in the bloodthirsty camp. It was also at that time that he became close friends with Ning Meng, Shi Yu, Bai Lingshi, Yi Qi, Gong Ming, Li Duxing, and others. Now that he had been away for nearly 100 years, he didn't know where these friends were now. Let's go. As Lin Sun was thinking, he left with Yi Lingshuang. His figure flickered and disappeared in a few blinks of an eye. It was too late for Yi Lingshuang to refuse. As they watched him leave, there was a lot of discussion. They were all speculating about Lin Sun's identity and what impact his appearance would have on the hostility between the Yi family of the East Sea and the Heavens Pivot Holy Land. Interesting, we were all wrong before. The green-haired handsome man revealed a playful smile. His aura is so restrained that no one can detect it. I'm afraid this person's cultivation is not lower than mine. His companions around him were all surprised. The green-haired handsome man was called Wei Yunzhong, the holy son of the Green Shark clan of the Soul Oblivion Sea. He was extremely talented. In the decades after the spiritual qi recovery, his cultivation had been soaring. Now he had the cultivation of the quasi-emperor realm, which overshadowed some of the elders in his clan. Wei Yunzhong's prestige also quickly spread in the Soul Oblivion Sea. No one had expected that a person like Wei Yunzhong would think so highly of the young man. For a moment their hearts were in turmoil. Only the cold and arrogant woman had a complicated look in her eyes. That guy is too insidious. He obviously has the cultivation of the quasi-emperor realm, but he said he didn't know the myriad Tao realm. Previously, she had thought that Lin Sun would die. Who would have thought that such a change would happen? In fact, she was quite embarrassed. When she said this, she also had a strong prejudice. Wei Yunzhong smiled and said, "It's just a character we met by chance. Don't be angry about it. Let's go." It is said that there will be a shocking Taoist opportunity in the forbidden city of the Xiao Empire. It even alarmed many ancient orthodoxies in the ancient desolation realm to intervene. If we want a share, we can't delay any longer. As he spoke, he took the lead and flew away. The others hurriedly followed. On the blue sea, seagulls were flying. Lin Sun brought Yi Lingshuang along as they soared through the air, exuding a leisurely air. He didn't fly at full speed, he was more like a tourist, enjoying the wonders of heaven and earth. The revival of spirit qi had changed the structure of the entire Xiao Empire and made the whole world look completely different from before. In the past, the king's domain could be called an overlord, but now it was a common sight. For example, Yi Lingshuang was only 17 or 18 years old at most, but she already had a cultivation base at the 7th level of the longevity tribulation. Even Lin Sun couldn't help but be surprised. Lin Sun calmed his mind and felt the changes in Zhou Su, deducing them. He couldn't help but wonder what would have happened to his cultivation if he had stayed in the mortal world instead of going to the ancient desolation realm. After a while, Lin Sun got an answer. If he had stayed back then, it would have been impossible for him to achieve the great Tao he had today. After all, the revival of spirit qi had only begun in the last few decades. The myriad Tao realm could only accommodate people of the first-level Emperor realm at most. This also meant that even if the world changed drastically, it was impossible for the current myriad Tao world to give birth to someone with a cultivation base higher than the first level of the martial Emperor realm. And he, Lin Sun, was now in the 4th level of the martial Emperor realm, and he was the first peak-level emperor in 100,000 years. More importantly, the speed of cultivation didn't represent one's achievements on the Great Tao. 4th senior brother Ling Xuanzi could be said to be the best in the history. He became a sage at 9 and a peak-level emperor at 19, but he was still slightly inferior to Lin Sun in the same realm. Lin Sun had paid attention to Yi Lingshuang's battle before. The power of the 7th level of the longevity tribulation realm was far from being comparable to him when they were at the same level. This was because the speed of cultivation was too fast, but the tempering of each level was lacking. "Senior, do you really know my grandpa?" On the way, Lin Sun's demeanor was calm, allowing Yi Lingshuang to relax. She couldn't help but ask curiously, even the way she addressed him changed. Yes, he was a little fatty back then. He looked naive, but in fact, he was full of evil tricks. Lin Sun smiled. Yi Lingshuang didn't know what was in her mind, but she laughed out loud. The girl was pretty and lively, and her laughter was as clear as spring water, radiating charm. The girl giggled. No wonder, although Grandpa is always smiling, my father and the others don't dare to disobey him. Lin Sun casually asked, "What happened to your Yi clan recently? Why is the heavens pivot sacred ground targeting you?" Yi Lingshuang's smile disappeared, and a hint of anger appeared on her face. She revealed the grudge between the Yi clan and the heavens pivot sacred ground. The reason was very simple. Since the recovery of spiritual qi in the lower realm, 9 spiritual springs appeared in the territory controlled by the Yi clan. These 9 spiritual springs all had their own wonders. Some spewed out gunmetal qi, some contained Yiwood essence, and some released Xuani fire. Not only could it be used for cultivation, but it also had immeasurable benefits for alchemy, weapon forging, and even tempering the physique. These 9 spiritual springs were also known as Spirit Auspicious Springs, and they benefited the Yi clan greatly. In just a few decades, a large number of dazzling figures emerged. Yi Lingshuang was one of them. But 10 years ago, when the heavens pivot sacred ground opened up a passageway to the myriad Tao world, they chose to use the Eastern Sea as their foundation to open up branches and expand their forces. Until now, over 100 clans and forces that were originally under the command of the Yi clan in the Eastern Sea had all chosen to submit to the heavens pivot sacred ground. Except for the Yi clan. Although their territory and forces were being nibbled away, the Yi clan could only endure. With the foundation of their clan, it was impossible for them to compete with an ancient orthodoxy like the heavens pivot sacred ground. But recently, the heavens pivot sacred ground had repeatedly sent emissaries to the Yi clan, making it clear that the Yi clan only had 2 choices. They could either choose to submit or give up the Spirit Auspicious Springs, or they would suffer a great calamity. The Yi clan naturally didn't agree, and they had completely offended the heavens pivot sacred ground. Now, the relationship between the 2 parties was already at a state of mutual hostility. Just like this time, Yi Lingshuang was originally heading to a spiritual island in the Eastern Sea to collect treasured herbs, but she was ambushed on the way, resulting in the scene just now. Knowing all this, Lin Sun couldn't help but frown. It seems that the heavens pivot sacred ground has already decided to act against the Yi clan. Otherwise, they wouldn't dare to so brazenly send people to capture you. Yi Lingshuang said worriedly, "I'm also worried about this. You lead the way, we'll go to the Yi clan first." Lin Sun made a decision. Yi Lingshuang nodded. Qingtsang City. The Eastern Sea Yi clan's territory. The Wind Cliff Dojo, the Yi clan's largest martial arts training ground. In the past, the Yi clan's disciples would all practice martial arts there, and it was extremely lively. But today, the atmosphere of the Wind Cliff Dojo was extremely stifling. In the early morning, a quasi-emperor elder from the heavens pivot sacred ground called Rong Linha led over 100 clan leaders. On the surface, it was a visit, but in reality, it was a showdown with the Yi clan. At this time, on the left side of the dojo, Rong Linha and a group of clan leaders sat on the ground. On the right side of the dojo, sat the important figures of the Yi clan. In the center, the current head of the Yi clan, Yi Xingyo, also Lin Sun's best friend, Yi Qi, sat. "So, if the Yi clan doesn't agree, you will openly seize it?" In the oppressive atmosphere, Yi Qi spoke in a low voice, his face full of coldness and a forceful anger. "It's not openly seize. A place like the 9 springs of spiritual auspicious spirit is originally a blessing nurtured by the heavens and the earth. In the beginning, it didn't belong to the Yi clan." On the left side, Rong Linha stroked his beard and spoke indifferently. He was dressed in a black Taoist robe and his hair was coiled into a bun. He had the demeanor of an immortal, and his every move revealed a high and mighty dignity. After a pause, he continued, "Taoist Yi, time is precious. Please make a decision soon, otherwise." "Otherwise what?" Yi Qi's eyes flashed with a cold light. Rong Linha smiled slightly and said, "Since Taoist ye can't make a decision, then I'll help you." As soon as he finished speaking, a figure rushed in from outside the Taoist's sanctum, looking anxious and uneasy. He said in a trembling voice, "Patriarch, something bad has happened. When the seventh child was working in Miaotsue City, he was suddenly taken away by a group of people." "What? How could this be?" In the row on the right, the big shots of the Yi clan couldn't sit still, and their expressions changed. Only Yi Qi looked at Rong Linha with cold eyes. "Did the heavens pivot Holy Land do this?" Rong Linha stroked his beard and said with a smile, "I've heard that the seventh child of the Yi clan is intelligent and elegant, like a dragon among men. He is regarded as a rare genius of the Yi clan in 1,000 years. I love him, so I invited him to stay in the heavens pivot Holy Land for a few days." "You've gone too far. What do you mean by love? It's obviously a kidnapping. You're too despicable." The big shots of the Yi clan were all angry. Their chests heaved, and they gnashed their teeth with hatred. Rong Linha looked indifferent and said, "Don't panic, everyone. This is just the beginning." Just the beginning? All of a sudden, the hearts of Yi Qi and the other members of the Yi family sank. Sure enough, it didn't take long before someone stumbled over and shouted, "Clan leader, it's bad. Third young miss and fourth young miss have been kidnapped." His voice was filled with fear and anxiety. These words were like a bolt from the blue, and it caused Yi Qi's entire body to tremble. When he looked at the other great figures of the Yi clan, their expressions were extremely unsightly, and they were angered to the point the veins on their foreheads bulged. "I heard that the Yi family's third miss and fourth miss are twin sisters. They are born with the countenance of a flower and the countenance of the moon. They are called the twin beauties of heaven and earth. What is rare is that they are still unmarried." Rong Linha spoke again with a warm smile. "It just so happens that my heavens pivot sacred ground never lacks young geniuses. I intend to personally choose an ideal husband for these two sisters. What does fellow Taoist Yi think?" The meaning behind these words was too malicious. She clearly wanted the two sisters to serve the same person together. All of a sudden, Yi Qi flew into a rage. Mobile version, Chapter 2445. Rong Linha, you're courting death. Yi Qi's eyes were red, and his voice seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth. The great figures of the Yi clan stood up abruptly while their imposing auras surged, and they seemed as if they would immediately attack once Yi Qi gave the order. However, Rong Linha remained fearless in the face of danger. "Everyone, don't be impatient. I've already said that this is just the beginning. If you attack now, I'm afraid you won't be able to see the good show later." "There's more?" Yi Qi's heart sank. He took a deep breath and waved his hand. "Sit down. Let's see what he's up to." Rong Linha smiled. "That's more like it. Patriarch, something bad has happened. Deacon 9 and third young master are missing." Suddenly, a loud and panicked cry resounded from outside the Dao Plaza. Although the ninth young master is young, he already has the potential to transform into a dragon. I quite admire him, so I invited him to my humble abode as a guest," Rong Linha casually said. Yi Qi and the other big shots of the Yi family felt their hearts sink. Their hands and feet turn cold. They finally realized the seriousness of the problem. Just like that, bad news would come every few moments, and it was like a heavy blow that caused Yi Qi and the other members of the Yi clan to feel a chill run down their spines, and their expressions became more and more unsightly. On the other hand, Rong Linha seemed as if he didn't notice it, and every time bad news arrived, he would casually comment on it. Every single word he spoke was simply like a blade that fiercely stabbed into the hearts of the Yi clan clansmen. Even the clan heads who had come with Rong Linha couldn't help but be secretly shocked. Too ruthless. This was clearly a premeditated plan to capture the entire younger generation of the Yi family in one fell swoop and use this to force the Yi family to lower their heads. In other words, under such circumstances, how could the Yi clan not lower its head? One had to know that once the younger generation was killed, the Yi family would have no successors for a period of time. In the context of the revival of spirit Qi, even if the clan could survive without the younger generation, they were destined to be abandoned by this era. The atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive, causing everyone to be unable to breathe. A Yi family elder bitterly said, "Patriarch, we can let go of Rui Ling 9 Springs, but those children, we can't let anything happen to them." The other members of the Yi family also looked at Yi Qi with anxious, indignant, and sullen expressions, but they had to accept the reality. Yi Qi was silent. Her face was livid and uncertain. His heart was also shaken. It didn't matter if they lost the spirit spring, but if something happened to the younger generation of the clan, it would be irretrievable. But right at this moment, Rong Linha smiled and said, "Everyone, it's no longer just a matter of the auspicious spirit underworld. If you want those youths to return unharmed, your Yi clan must lower your head and choose to submit to my heaven's pivot holy ground." As he finished speaking, his voice was powerful and filled with resolution. Bang! Yi Qi stood up abruptly and kicked the table before him into pieces, and he said with a ghastly expression, "Rong Linha, do you intend to force my Yi clan into a corner?" Rong Linha picked up a cup of wine and emptied it before revealing a disdainful expression. "Fellow Taoist Yi, since it has already come to this, I might as well speak frankly. In the eyes of my heaven's pivot sacred ground, your Yi clan is an existence akin to clay chickens and pottery dogs. It is extremely easy for us to annihilate your Yi clan." His gaze swept across the members of the Yi family, and his eyes were cold and indifferent. "If it weren't for the fact that my heaven's pivot holy ground has just arrived here, and we still need some manpower to govern this territory, you wouldn't even have the qualifications to negotiate with me." His words were domineering and dignified, and they intimidated everyone present. Yi Qi's expression was gloomy and uncertain. If it was just him, he would rather die. But now, every word he said represented the entire Yi clan, and the life and death of over 1,000 clansmen depended on a single thought of his. This made him have no choice but to endure, and he had no choice but to consider the various consequences. No matter how aggrieved, how angry, how helpless, he could only endure. "Now, it is time to make a decision." Rong Linha spoke indifferently, and his eyes were filled with disdain. Yi Qi only felt that his throat was blocked, and he felt an unprecedented heaviness. The survival of the clan was only a year away, and this decision was too difficult. At this moment, suddenly, a restless sound came from outside the training hall. "Miss Ling Shuang, the patriarch and the others are discussing." "Get out of the way." Everyone couldn't help but look over. They saw the pretty and dainty Yi Ling Shuang in a red dress walk in hastily, and beside her was an unfamiliar young man. Rong Linha couldn't help but frown. The matter had already reached a critical juncture, but a little girl had disrupted it. This caused him to feel extremely sullen in his heart. But when he saw the young man beside Yi Ling Shuang, Rong Linha's eyes narrowed. What a familiar figure! Could it be the young man from back then? "Ling Shuang. Lass, this has nothing to do with you. Why did you barge in? Even if the sky falls, there are still us old fellows to hold it up. Quickly leave. Why did you bring a stranger here? Could it be that you also, the clansmen of the Yi clan, were also astonished, especially when they saw Lin Sun following beside Yi Ling Shuang?" Their hearts tightened, and their expressions changed abruptly, thinking that Yi Ling Shuang had been forced to come here. At this moment, Yi Qi, who was sitting in the seat of honor in the center, suddenly stood up as if his butt had been pricked by a needle. He looked at the young man beside Yi Ling Shuang in disbelief, and his mouth was agape. "Fatty, long time no see." Lin Sun smiled, and his eyes were filled with emotion. The Yi Qi of the past was fair and clean, and he was charmingly naive. But now, he was tall and straight, his face resolute, and the corners of his eyes were filled with the vicissitudes of life. It was as if he had changed into a different person. 100 years had passed, and the affairs of the world had changed. The youth of his old friend had also gradually faded away. Fatty? Everyone present was stunned. This was the head of the Yi clan, the king of the Eastern Sea. Ever since he had taken control of the clan, he had long established an illustrious reputation. Even the elders had to show some respect to him. But now, he had become the fatty in the mouth of a strange young man, and the scene that happened next made everyone dumbfounded. They saw that the dignified clan leader in their hearts was now so excited that his body was trembling, and he spoke incoherently. "Ha ha ha, you finally have a conscience. You finally came to see me." His voice spread throughout the entire hall. Everyone turned to look at him. Everyone could see that at this moment, the head of the Yi clan had lost his composure, and his face was filled with ecstasy and excitement. For a moment, they couldn't help but wonder who this strange young man was. Why did he make Yi Qi lose his composure the moment he appeared? Yi Lingshuang heaved a sigh of relief. All of this proved that the senior beside her wasn't lying. He was indeed her grandfather's friend. Lin Sun sighed lightly, and his gaze swept across the entire hall. He said, "If I didn't come, how would I know that you're in such a difficult situation now?" His words calmed Yi Qi down. His expression was uncertain, and he shook his head bitterly. "Brother Lin," Lin Sun waved his hand and said, "No need to say more. I already know everything. Since I'm here, leave this matter to me." His words were light and breezy. But the members of the Yi clan were all stunned. What a big tone! That was the heavens' pivot holy ground. Even the Yi clan couldn't raise their heads. How could he solve this problem alone? Even Yi Lingshuang, who had brought Lin Sun all the way here, couldn't help but be stunned. What a joke! "Friend, do you know who the people here are? How dare you speak so shamelessly?" Suddenly, an old man in a luxurious robe sneered. He was one of the many clan leaders who had come with Rong Linha. Seeing him speak, the other clan leaders nearby also sneered. This guy clearly didn't see the situation clearly. The ignorant were blissful. Lin Sun glanced at the old man in luxurious robe and said, "A lackey like you dares to bark in front of me?" As soon as he finished speaking, the old man in luxurious robe bled from his 7 orifices. His entire body twitched as he lay on the ground, unable to speak a word. His divine soul had already been shattered. Everyone present was shocked. With just one sentence, he had seriously injured a saint king. Only Yi Qi's expression was normal as he sighed endlessly. This guy was still as overbearing as before. The scene was chaotic, and screams rang out everywhere. The expressions of the clan leaders changed, and they panicked and uneasy as they realized how terrifying Lin Sun was. At this moment, Rong Linha suddenly stood up, and his eyes locked onto Lin Sun like lightning. "Lin Sun, it's really you." He recognized that the young man in front of him was clearly Demon God Lin, who had obtained the title of the #1 great saint in the 9 regions, decades ago. A young man who was like a legend. However, after not seeing him for so many years, both Lin Sun's temperament and appearance had changed, causing Rong Linha to not dare to recognize him at first. Lin Sun. When they heard this name, the whole audience was shocked and stirred up. For the clansmen of Yi family and the patriarchs present, this name was absolutely resounding and legendary. Even after so many years, there were still rumors about him in the myriad Dao realm. His child was unparalleled in the world, and he was crowned all over the capital. He was the head of the Lin family of heart-cleansing peak, an unparalleled and peerless talent. He had fought in the Empire and killed countless enemies of the Empire. The picturesque landscape was stained with blood. He once fought in the bloodthirsty battlefield, turned the tide with his own strength, destroyed the voodoo barbarian army, and broke the alliance of 10,000 races. Once, there were too many legendary stories about him. However, with the passage of time and the recovery of spiritual qi, the rise of generation after generation of young strongmen, coupled with the disappearance of Lin Sun in the mortal world for many years, made such a legendary figure, like a faded flower, rarely mentioned in recent decades. As the saying goes, talented people appear in every generation, and each of them will lead the way for hundreds of years. The heroes of the past would always be blown away by the wind and rain. No matter how amazing the heroes were, after disappearing for many years, their memories would be diluted, and they would lose the brilliance of the past. Only a few rumors would remain in the world. Who would have thought that this legend, who was the center of attention in the past, would return at this time? For a moment, all eyes turned to Lin Sun with shock. Yiling Shuang was so agitated that her face was flushed red. She clenched her snow-white fists tightly. Ever since she was young, she had heard many stories about Lin Sun from her grandfather. In her heart, there were many seeds of longing and admiration for him. She viewed him as a divinity, yearning for him in her heart. Never would he have thought that the senior who had saved him was actually the legend that he had admired since he was young. P.S. With everyone's help, Goldfish has won second place for Zongheng's Best Author of the Year. There's one more chapter to be updated tonight. Thank you for voting so enthusiastically these past few days. Mobile version, Chapter 2446. Rong Linha's heart was in turmoil. For the heavens pivot Holy Land and even the entire ancient Desolation realm, demon god Lin was definitely a frightening character. Just the descendants of the major orthodoxies that he had slaughtered were countless. Even someone as powerful as Yun Qin Bai was suppressed by him. Especially after winning a great victory in the Nine Regions battlefield under his leadership, his reputation in the ancient Desolation realm reached an unprecedented level. All living beings in the world admired him. This was for those forces that had enmity with Lin Sun. At that time, Lin Sun had become their sore point, making them restless and unable to eat or sleep in peace. Not long after Lin Sun left the ancient Desolation realm and went to the Kunlun ruins, many orthodoxies in the ancient Desolation realm who heard the news were relieved, as if they had gotten rid of their inner demons and sent away the plague. But he never thought that after so many years, he would meet this demon-like guy in the mortal world. Then, Rong Linha calmed down. Today was different from the past. Lin Sun might have made great progress in cultivation over the past few decades, but the heavens pivot Holy Land was not to be trifled with. Especially with the recovery of spiritual qi in recent years, there had been some amazing changes in the ancient Desolation realm. Although it was far from being comparable to the mortal world, it had also made the overall power of the heavens pivot Holy Land rise by a lot. Lin Sun, you shouldn't have intervened in this matter, Rong Linha said coldly. After calming down, he showed his graceful and indifferent attitude again. Your era has long passed. In today's world, there are many people who are more dazzling than you were back then. He knew Lin Sun, but Lin Sun didn't know him. It was enough to know that he was an elder of the heavens pivot Holy Land. The scene fell silent for a moment. Everyone was surprised and doubtful. What Rong Linha said was true. In recent decades, all kinds of monsters, geniuses, and geniuses had emerged like mushrooms after the rain. Each of their achievements on the path of cultivation could be said to be extremely heaven-defying and caused a sensation in the world. In comparison, a senior like Lin Sun was already inferior. This made the Yi clan members worry about their gains and losses. However, Lin Sun's eyes were indifferent and calm. Eliminated by the times? This old guy probably didn't know what Lin Sun had done on the ancient way of starry sky over the years. He was still judging Lin Sun by the old standard. That was laughable. If the great monarchs on the starry sky ancient path heard these words, how would they feel? Seeing no reaction from Lin Sun, Rong Linha panicked inexplicably and said in a low voice, I know that with your resources and reserves, your cultivation has definitely improved greatly in these years that you've been silent and gone missing. But if you really dare to interfere in this matter, then not only will you completely offend my heaven's pivot sacred grounds, you'll even cause those descendants of the younger generation of the Yi clan to suffer. This was an undisguised threat. As expected, as soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of everyone from the Yi clan changed greatly. See you next time. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Not to mention a mere quasi-emperor like you, even if everyone from the heavenly pivot Holy Land came, they would not be qualified to challenge me. He stretched out his hand and grabbed. Rong Linha's face changed. He didn't expect that Lin Sun would fight without saying a word. Open! He shouted explosively and was just about to attack with his entire strength, yet he noticed to his astonishment that the strength in his entire body was actually firmly restrained. Not to mention resisting, he didn't even have the strength to raise a finger. Not good. His soul almost came out of his body. The next moment, his whole body was grabbed like a chick, and he knelt down in front of Lin Sun. His knees burst and the ground cracked. The pain made his vision go black, and he almost fainted. Everyone was completely dumbfounded, and their hearts twitched fiercely. Rong Linha, an elder with real power in the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land, was in existence of the quasi-emperor realm. In today's Myriad Dao world, he was absolutely a hegemon. But at this time, he was suppressed to kneel on the ground in an understatement. This scene deeply shocked the hearts of everyone present. Lin Sun, if you dare to kill me, the younger generation of the Yi clan won't be able to live. Rong Linha hissed, his expression ferocious, no longer graceful and indifferent. Brother Lin. Yi Qi also couldn't sit still, worried that if Lin Sun killed Rong Linha, the young people of the Yi clan would be in trouble. Fatty, when did you become so timid? Don't worry. Lin Sun sneered and pressed his palm down. Bang! Rong Linha's body burst into pieces, turning into ashes and scattering, and his primordial spirit was grasped in Lin Sun's palm for inspection. He actually killed him like this. The clansmen of the Yi clan were scared out of their wits. There was only one thought in their minds. It's over. This was equivalent to completely offending the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land. And the patriarchs of the various clans who came with Rong Linha were all scared out of their wits, almost peeing in their pants. They probably didn't expect that Lin Sun would be so direct and domineering, killing without a care for how noble Rong Linha's status was. Such an unscrupulous and lawless attitude made them deeply understand how powerful the master of heart-cleansing Peak, who once dominated the Xiao Empire in those years, was. The members of the Yi clan were worried about gains and losses, and only Yi Lingshuang felt extremely happy. Her beautiful eyes lit up, and she said in a crisp voice, "Senior, you killed him well." Yi Qi smiled bitterly. This granddaughter's character was very similar to his when he was young. Unfortunately, he was no longer young. A moment later, Lin Sun twisted his palm and Rong Linha's primordial spirit collapsed and annihilated. Seeing this, the patriarchs of the various clans were all disheartened and looked gloomy. Rong Linha was dead. How could Lin Sun spare their vassals? Sure enough, Lin Sun waved his sleeve, and all the patriarchs attached to the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land were suppressed and imprisoned. Then, Lin Sun's figure flashed and soared into the sky, turning into a stream of light and disappearing into the depths of the clouds in an instant. Only one sentence came from afar, "Fatty, I'll leave it to you. I'll go and save people first. I'll be back in a moment." Everyone stared at the place where Lin Sun disappeared, dumbfounded. Even Yi Qi was stunned and speechless. The members of the Yi clan felt like they were dreaming as they looked at the group of clan leaders who were lying on the ground unsteadily. East Sea. Feiyun's spiritual island. This place was originally the residence of a small clan, but as the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land opened the passage and descended to the mortal world, they immediately occupied the Feiyun spiritual island and regarded it as a stronghold. After many years of operation, the Feiyun spiritual island seemed to have changed its appearance. On the island there were pavilions, palaces, auspicious light, and dense spiritual qi. It was just like an immortal paradise. Whoosh! A stream of light broke through the air, and Lin Sun's figure appeared. His spiritual awareness spread out and covered the whole Feiyun spiritual island in an instant. 36 large-scale forbidden formations and 108 defensive forbidden formations. In addition, there are 3 quasi-emperor experts and 319 successors. In an instant, the detailed situation of the Feiyun spiritual island appeared in Lin Sun's mind. Combined with the information he got from Tong Linha's spirit, Lin Sun had a clear understanding of the situation here. With a flash, he landed on the Feiyun spiritual island, his clothes fluttering, and his hands behind his back. Along the way, Lin Sun saw many successors of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land, as well as many practitioners attached to the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land. But from beginning to end, no one found any trace of Lin Sun. Even the power of the prohibition covering the island seemed to be in vain. Without any reaction, Lin Sun passed through it easily. After a while, an antique palace appeared in Lin Sun's sight. In front of the palace, there were 4 successors of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land. They were talking and didn't notice that a figure passed under their eyes. In the palace, more than a dozen young people fainted on the ground. There were men and women, and their cultivation was all sealed. It was obvious that they were the young generation of Yi family who were caught. Lin Sun waved his sleeve, and these clansmen of Yi family were put away. Then, Lin Sun turned around and left. When he passed by the gate of the palace again, the 4 successors of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land still didn't notice him at all. In fact, with Lin Sun's current cultivation, if he wanted to hide himself, it would be difficult for ordinary emperors to notice him, not to mention the practitioners on the Feiyun spiritual island. Before long, Lin Sun rose into the air. Standing on the clouds, he looked down and said to himself, "Enemies always meet. You can only blame yourself for falling into my hands. You're destined to have this tribulation." He waved his sleeve. Buzzsword howls resounded through the sky like tidewater, while countless glistening strands of sword chi surged out like a torrent, and they covered this expanse of space. The sword chi was so dense that it covered the sky. What a magnificent sword chi! Who is practicing swordsmanship in the clouds? On the Feiyun spiritual island, countless people were alarmed. Looking up, they saw the brilliant sword chi intertwining above the clouds like a river of swords. It was a spectacular scene. However, the next moment, screams of horror sounded. Countless people fled in horror, and the whole island was in a mess, because the dense strands of sword chi were like a violent storm that descended from the sky, and they tore through the sky and poured down in torrents. Boom! The layers of restrictive formations covering the Feiyun spiritual island, like paper, burst into pieces in an instant, turning into turbulence and spreading. Wherever the sword chi passed, more than 300 successors of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land scattered in different areas of the island were instantly drowned by the brilliant sword chi. In a flash, the color of blood, like a dizzy dye, appeared in large patches, dyeing the Feiyun spiritual island a dazzling scarlet. Who dares to come to the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land and make trouble? In a palace, a strong quasi-emperor who was meditating suddenly got up and rushed out of the palace in a flash. But as soon as he appeared outside the palace, he was cut by a dazzling sword chi and was instantly drowned by the bright sword chi. He turned into ashes. In less than 3 seconds, the sword chi fell like a downpour. On the whole island, all the strong people of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land were killed, and the sky was dyed with blood. Only those who were under the command of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land were lucky enough to escape. But when they saw the bloody purgatory-like death scene, they were all paralyzed with fear. In the clouds, Lin Sun didn't even look at it and moved away. It was only 10 minutes until he returned to the Wind Cliff Taoist field of Yi family. P.S. More updates and sent over.